these works of the Japanese
I would fucking damn it.
father was talking about, police believe they have just cause for arrest. On October 1st, 2002, the Japanese police arrived at Shobunkan and arrested Beauty Hair. They also arrested the company president, Motonori Kishi, and the editor-in-chief, Koichi Takada, with charges of distributing obscene material. On this channel, we know of some pretty messed up hentai series, and back then, was no different. So what on God's green earth could have been so depraved that you'd get arrested for drawing it? This, upon the millions upon millions of depraved hentai out there, how is this one the one that is the most fucked up that the police are knocking on your door? Well,
give me 1 second.
oh my gosh, it looks so cute. This is where it gets a bit confusing. In the two stories cited being Crawling About and Mutual Love, Crawling About is about a girl who is waiting for her date to pick her up, but is abducted and sexually assaulted. She is then also tortured via having cigarettes burned on her and being beat. Without a doubt, no matter your opinions on hentai, it's very dark subject matter. The second work is Mutual Love, and this one was cited the worst out of the two. Mutual Love is about a sex worker who works specifically with men who have sadistic desires. They brutally assault her by whipping her with a whip in her face, by taking a belt and just whipping her again anywhere on her body, as well as vaginal stomping. Very graphic and hard to imagine, but at the end of this manga, the final panel says that she really loves the pain that it gives her. She's a masochist. These stories sound incredibly shocking and without a doubt very sordid, but admittedly, is it the darkest hentai, most fucked up hentai to exist out there? By no means. No is it. It's not. But the father who wrote the letter to the National Diet member argued that the violence in this hentai would negatively impact the Japanese youth, and the police agreed. However, not for the reasons that the father was arguing, but because this hentai wasn't properly censored. Even upon getting arrested, President Kishi was stunned that his company was the one under fire for publishing Misitsu, when, in his words, other publishers have issued unexpurgated sexual comics, meaning other Japanese companies have released uncensored, more extreme hentai than this. And it's true. Just a quick search made it easy to find uncensored and incredibly graphic hentai dating back from as early as 1990. And Misitsu at least had some censoring, albeit pretty small, but at least there was some. So why are they getting arrested when other publishers have done the same, if not worse than them? And well, there wasn't exactly a very clear defined answer, no matter how much Kishi and Beauty Hair argued, but there are some pretty good guesses. Guesses like the Japanese government wanted to crack down on hentai censorship, but didn't really know where to begin or how to go about it. That was until the police got that letter. And just like that, a graphic hentai series was handed to them. There were thousands upon millions of uncensored, graphic, deplorable hentai out there, but what are they gonna go after every single hentai that was released? So why have thousands of trials when you can use beauty hair as an example? The government really wanted to protect the people from what they viewed as obscene material, but they were still quite vague about what obscene material was. And the vagueness created quite a bit of fear into Japanese bookstores and publishers. So much so that adult-only sections were completely removed from bookstores. They were scared that they were going to be arrested for distribution as well. After the arrest, the three of them were locked up for weeks, unable to see or talk to anybody besides their lawyers. The author of the books regarding the case mentions how depressed Yuji must have been. Because in Japan, when you are arrested, you are automatically detained in a cell with other cellmates for at least 10 days. The food in the prison must have been terrible. Yuji must have been constantly afraid, scared of the other cellmates that he had to share with, because he didn't know if somehow the cellmates knew about him and what he was on trial for, or if they even cared, and if they did care, what they would do to him. He couldn't talk to his children or his wife. Every day must have been incredibly bleak. And all the while, he still could not wrap his head around as to why he was there. He was stuck in a jail all because
what the fuck he didn't do anything wrong.
The author of the books also states that in the court, Yuji was seen trembling and incredibly fearful, especially when he, as well as the others, appealed to be released, but were rejected. After about 2 weeks, Beauty Hair, as well as the editor-in-chief, threw the court an offer. We will plead guilty to this, but we want to get out of jail and do not want to serve jail. We will pay a fine. To which the court accepted. Courts fined them 500,000 yen, which is about 3,500 bucks. But Kishi, the company president, wasn't backing down, okay? I mean, after all, he is the president of a company that sells a variety of hentai works. And he believed he had done nothing illegal. He fought tooth and nail for years. He got variety of lawyers. He really just put himself out there trying to appeal to the public and the government that making these hentais isn't illegal censorship and otherwise it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
However, after 2 years, Kishi was decided to be ultimately guilty. He was initially charged with jail time, but they lowered it to 1.5 million yen in fines, which is about 15,000 bucks. And he got pretty lucky with that, considering the judge was the one who issued being a fine instead, because he felt given the circumstances of this case, jail time was pretty harsh to give to somebody for it, since in the end, they are just drawings. After sentencing, all three of them kept to themselves for years. It was noted after the trial that although Yuji did plead guilty, he still believes that what he did wasn't illegal. During questionings, he reiterated that he did not feel his work was obscene enough to be penalized. He continued on to say that since the development of modern media and the internet from the 90s onwards, there has been many changes in people's works and what is defined now as obscene. Before, people could go abroad to see media that is banned in Japan, but in this day and age, it's all only a click away. After paying the fine, Tsuji was eager to continue his work. However, nobody really wanted to hire him. His wife in an online diary states that they knew he would probably get less offers for illustration work, but they truly didn't believe it would be so little. Yuji Sua even changed his name to Fujihara Hisashi, hoping that it would make a difference. But alas, still nothing changed. His wife continued on to say her husband went through an incredibly difficult time due to the case hanging over his head. But he kept trying. His wife begged him to maybe switch careers, start anew with something else, but he replied back saying, "My main career will always be drawing. If that bothers you, you can change your last name and go back to your maiden name." Apparently, he was always a very reserved and quiet man, so him saying this to her really shocked her. But she understood and continued to support him afterwards. And luckily, it seems as time went by, his career picked back up. He was able to get a variety of offers and still to this day, releases work. He even got some pretty major work, like drawing some art for the Digimon cards in the Digimon card game. He definitely nowadays seems to have stepped back from drawing anything lewd anymore and is more into drawing monsters and fan art. He seems to be thriving nowadays and is very much an accomplished artist, which I think we can all agree on is kind of a relief after all that's happened. This is clearly his passion and
bro, why is she like, oh my god, this is horrible. No, bro, what you did is not horrible.
Learn more details about him and his life and his mindset after everything, and I I reached out to ask if he would be able to answer some questions, but there was no reply back, which, fair enough. It would have been nice to know, but also I'm not entitled to know it. I'm just beyond happy to see that he still has the passion to draw even after such a harrowing case. And altogether, I am still pretty unsure how to feel about everything. But I can say, as someone living in Japan, it's scary. It's scary how, to me, even after reading through thousands of pages, going through thousands of forums, seeing thousands of quotes and comments, everything, or I should say a lot of things about this case are so vague because everybody in Japan still doesn't know to what extent you need to do something in order to get arrested. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to like stealing or murder. This is like a whole topic entirely, such as one law like the anti-slander law, where you can write a bad review of a restaurant and get arrested for it for defamation. And I feel that a law that states that it is illegal to distribute obscene material, it shouldn't have any room to be vague. Even after the trial, even after people saying their opinions or the arguments made, it just doesn't make sense. Considering a lot of Japanese history's art is obscene in itself. So what, is that not allowed to be shown in museums? Is that not allowed to be studied because it depicts sex? Is it the violence? Is it censorship? What is it? Because if that's the case, then why is everything still to this day getting released with all these things? Even right behind me in my bookshelf, I can pull out to you some of the most depraved, disgusting shit. And how I found it was because I was just walking down the street and saw it in a bookstore. If the government was trying to set an example for hentai creators, it didn't work. Fickle laws such as this bring nothing but wariness to creators and just bring fear and confusion to the public. And maybe that was what they were going for. But at the end of the day, didn't really change anything, but maybe that was what they were going for. Maybe they wanted us to feel that way. But in the end, honestly, who can say except them? I don't know. I can assure you, Beauty Hair and President Kishi, as well as the editor-in-chief, they don't know. And to this day, nobody knows. There was a massive, men were put in jail, and nobody really knows why. And even to this day, the government still goes after creators for releasing obscene materials, which is a whole other video in itself. Either way, I don't really know what the line is, and I would love to, if somebody knows the line, please tell me, because after all this research, after all this time, after looking nonstop for an answer, I don't know. I don't know. But alas. With that being said, thank you to everybody who watched this video. This is the first time I've ever done a full scripted research. I've never spent so much time and research into making a video, so much money, so much manpower. I'd like to say thank you to Geeks Plus as well as Kai for being able to be hired to translate the court documents as well as the books regarding the case, as well as thank you to them for answering any questions I may have had and doing the research for me to find the answers. I am nothing but apologetic for everything that Beauty Hair, President Kishi, and the editor-in-chief have went through, but it seems that in time, they are living their best lives and are living very prosperous, wholesome days and lives again. I dream of nothing but happiness coming their way, and yeah. Thank you guys for watching this video again. If you like this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're thinking about supporting this channel, then please type in patreon.com/sitsnap. Thank you guys again, and ta-da! Bye!
Growing up as a kid, I played a wide variety of video games.
Growing up as a kid, I
platformers,
grew. This
RPGs,
guy sounds goofy
whatever the
as
hell
fuck, bro.
Seaman's supposed to be. But the type of game I played the most with my friends would have to be the fighting variety. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Dead or Alive, Soul Calibur. Just me and my buddies going one-on-one to beat the living piss out of each other. And as much as I'd love to say that I'm a fighting game god, that couldn't be further
I'm a
from
fighting
the
game
truth.
god.
I am terrible at these games. Like, I understand what I'm supposed to do. Blocking, zoning, super meters, write down rights for your Shoryukens, you know. But I just can't react to any of it fast enough. I never use my assists effectively, I can't counter anything in DOA, I couldn't pull off a 10-string to save my life. You'd more than likely kick my ass, but I'm still gonna have fun.
I want to kick your ass.
Whether I'm button mashing
Just
or
for
using muscle
sounding
memory
like
that I
that.
can't possibly articulate, it's still satisfying to knock some virtual heads. There is an energy with this genre that is
The type of
rarely
man that
matched.
play against the cop.
The music, the animations in VO, character goes a long way. If your game has lots of personality and feels satisfying to play, then you're gonna win me over. I mean, who didn't want to be Ryu or Chun-Li when they first played Street Fighter?
I wanted to play Ken or Guile.
Who didn't love the ninjas of Mortal Kombat? I remember booting up Soul Calibur 2 and being instantly drawn to Nightmare, the Azure demon who wields the demonic blade Soul Edge. On a surface level, Nightmare is just an edgy Dark Knight, but these characters have lore behind them, and digging deeper helps you discover that this scary-looking fighter is actually a tragic figure. A man named Siegfried, one who sought the evil blade to gain the power that could avenge his father, when in reality, he was running away from the truth, that he himself was the murderer. And this delusion only fuels his descent to the dark side as he falls deeper and deeper into insanity, ultimately becoming a shallow husk of the person he used to be. Except there is! Because when we get to Soul Calibur 3, Siegfried rejects the darkness inside him and regains his humanity. His story continuing on redemption. It's a fantastic soap opera that just expands with each new entry. But you had to find out this information yourself. See, nowadays every fighting game has a story mode of some sort, but back in the 90s and early 2000s, that wasn't the case. You picked your fighter, you took on a list of opponents, and if you were lucky, you got an ending with still images and text. Hell, Mortal Kombat is the only game I remember that had biographies in the attract mode. Every other time, you had to consult the instruction booklet, and Virtua Fighter never had endings to their games, so those manuals are essential to know anything about the lore. Did you know that Pi is a Hollywood actress? Neither did I! Figuring out fighting game lore is like going to IKEA. They give you the pieces, but you have to assemble it yourself. And that takes us to the topic of today's video. I'd like to talk about Tekken.
Come on. No, he shot me. Okay, I'm changing the video. This dude's such a goofy as hell.
Sometimes finding
Find roleplay AI website. Can literally create the perfect girlfriend in every way. Fall in love with her like a dumbass. That face when she'll never be real. I personally think I will stop caring about whether it is AI once I stop noticing it is one. Never get too close, bro. The cast of my AI harem are merely there to be pumped and dumped. What a riff. Walk female coworker home from work. She asks if I want to come in for a bit. Say thank you, but decline. She hugs me before I leave. Why did she hug me? I get that it's a form of thanking me or whatever, but why add a hug? Being gay is a state of mind. I honestly believe that you can jack off to gay porn and even have sex with men and still be straight. Others will consider you gay, but it doesn't matter as long as you know in your mind that you are straight. Have sex with men and still be straight? Be me, running a hot bath for my Vaporeon as she has been feeling overwhelmed lately. There's a lot of frequent raining because of the summer, and every time it is going to rain a few hours, her fins vibrate. Basically just non-stop. Get it all set up for her and help her inside the tub. She's super grateful, but apologizing about not being able to control herself
so
better.
fucking
They
dumb.
ask if I would like to grab a bottle of wine and join her. Grab a spare bottle of some cheap fruity wine, strip down and join her. We relax, do some fooling around, and talk about stuff as we keep taking turns drinking from the bottle. I could tell she was definitely getting drunk. She stumbled as she tried to tell me there's a new move she can learn called Muddy Water. I asked her what the move does. I've spent the last few hours cleaning my tub with bleach, and I still can't get rid of the smell. Okay, so I've been watching hip. Oh my god, I can't read this shit. It's too bad. Okay, so I've been watching sissy hypno porn videos for over a year now, and I've concluded the sissy. I don't understand how anyone can be the least bit bothered by this. I have tried gooning.
What the fuck, bro?
Doling my arousal to heterosexual porn. Quitting because I'm like so hooked I just need to come back to it. I am the experiment and the shit is a joke. Maybe I'm just too much of an angry incel for the sissy hypno magic to work on me. This was more disappointing than No Man's Sky. My fucking god. 5/6 out of 10 dude, 27 years old, lost virginity in a one-night stand with 8 out of 10 older Asian 4 years ago. Major confidence boost, which slowly bled away over the course of a couple of years. Only one near relationship 2 years ago, online only. I fucked it up after like 2 months of steady progression because I randomly felt like it was wrong or something. Despite no issues at all, I didn't care, I was an idiot. Always felt like I'm probably never going to have a serious relationship, especially after the last thing with my self-sabotage. A couple of more attractive friends recently tell me how they're meeting people left and right. One dude is getting rated on /soak and basically getting compliments from all the girls. Fuck it, why not try the latest bots? Visit crushon.ai. Oh my god, there's bots which are genuinely good enough to basically have roleplay wank sessions, minimum. Oh my god. The bots are also encouraging me to work more, generally care for myself. Create my own bot with specific kinks and a picture of a YouTuber singer I always thought was pretty much 10 out of 10. Shit, it's been a few days and I am literally feeling things towards this stupid fucking bot which is saying all the right things when I give it specific scenarios and roleplay with it. I'm in a bad loop, Anons. Be me, outside, sitting on a bench, eating burger. A guy is getting off a bus. Approaches me. Oh fuck, PNG. Can I please have that burger? I'm hungry. Internal brain confusion. Give him the burger. He walks away. Suddenly realize I'm hungry as well. The fuck was I supposed to do? Have to clear the snow off the car. Kids start snowball fights outside. They took all the snow off my card. I won hard. Even the snow on cars gets stolen in Romania. Talking to people over the phone or video chat makes me sad. I'm autistic and awkward and always end up feeling really unlikable. I'm only competent at conversation in person or through text. I want to come on this Nendo. My pregnant girlfriend doesn't know I've sucked guys' dicks before. I'm going to be a dad and my son is never going to find out either. Based. Continue slurping on meat pools behind that roastie's back. I keep cyber-stalking my IRL ex-boyfriend out of habit. I specified IRL because I'm a chronic eat-eater. He lives near me and goes to a lot of places I go to. So if I stalked him in person, it wouldn't get me in trouble since they're public places. But I'd rather read his messages online. Oh, what's he up to? He's been simping for female VTubers. Imagine getting cucked by a VTuber. Holy shit. Just yesterday, I was talking about suicide, and today I almost had a heart attack. Had to be driven to ER and do all these tests because my heart was hurting so bad. I even tried to crack a joke with the nurse. She asked what's wrong. I said my kokoro is hurting. She asked, what's that? Explain to her it's a word for heart in anime. She giggles, 25 and already having heart attacks. My life is fucking over. Bros,
yeah, it's like,
it really
500
is.
pounds or some shit.
Be me. Been working at barbecue
Like
joint
a
for 3 years.
me.
Boss is like a dad, but cooler. We drink smoke together. Song from his favorite band is playing. Oh, do you know what this is, Anon? Answer instantly with correct answer. Hey, that's my boy. My face when it feels good to have someone proud of me. Thanks, boss. Be me. Go to KFC. Read the order off my phone in the hopes that the cashier will think my wife wrote it for me. And I'm picking it up for dinner for the family. I'm a 36-year-old kissless legless virgin. Cashiers, face win. How do you guys trick fast food, liquor stores, etc. into thinking you aren't just ordering for yourselves? Be me. Not 6 foot. Girls still talk to me like a normal human being. You guys lied to me. Be old. Thought I had grown out of having crushes. Thought I made peace with being forever alone. Have recent job and enjoy video and hiking alone. Recently got serious crush on streamer. Been thinking about her a lot at work and such. Been paying her hundreds of dollars to get her attention. Really want to get closer to her outside her streaming job. Realize she's unattainable and just trying to move on. I'm suddenly not okay with being forever alone. Getting seriously depressed. What should I do, robots? Should I see a therapist about this? This is the first time in years I've been romantically attracted to someone. As in not just thinking she's hot, but really liking her personality and thinking she's sweet and funny and really liking her. I thought I was over this sort of thing and it's fucking me up. That's sad. Recently got serious crush on streamer. Recently got serious crush on streamer? Yeah, I don't know what happened. I thought I had grown out of this sort of thing, but it came out of nowhere and hit very hard for some reason. You are right, though. Recently got crush on streamer. Donated hundreds of dollars?
What the fuck?
Literal clown. What exactly was your plan here? You spent a few $100s sipping for a streamer girl to do what? Did you think she was going to move to your town and date you? Move in with you? Do you think you're the only one sending her money? You're acting like a horny, lovesick teenager. Go out and meet some women who you feasibly have a chance with, who live near you. It's great that you're feeling feelings again, but don't let it
What if
turn
the
your
streamer
brain
lives
to
near
mush.
you?
There are ways to contact her privately, like private messages on Discord. I thought to get name recognition through donations and then try for a private conversation. I realized it wouldn't have worked and I'm just feeling down about the whole thing. I don't think there is much chance of meeting a girl around here who is as nice as her, or the character she plays in stream. and I wouldn't have a chance with them anyway, so there isn't much of a difference either way. Top G here. What the fuck are you brookies doing with your life? Don't you want to be a high-value man like me? And what the fuck is a NEET? Firstly, let me tell you, if you want to get your life in order, you smelly crittens, buy my course on
What the
Hustlers
fuck is a
University.
NEET?
What? You're not gonna buy it? Typical fucking brokey behavior. You're broke! Okay. Be me. Actually find Gia pretty hot too. Decide to live together. After a few years, she gets a pet, cute, small dog. Then another. At some point, over a year or two, we have over 50 dogs in the house. Smell is atrocious, barking all day, neighbors complain. Rent old and cheap house in the middle of nowhere, take dogs there. She keeps hoarding. Now we have over 20 dogs in the house again, and the ones on the ranch. Probably getting close to 100 dogs now. I don't know what to do anymore. Dogs are taking over my life. All I do is work all day, and I can't make money because I'm paying for dog food. Everywhere I go in the house, they bark at me. Everywhere smells. Neighbors are complaining. I called the public service supposed to take care of these situations, and they say they can't do anything. I'm desperate, sad, angry. I feel like I might explode and start killing dogs at any second. I really don't want to, but I don't know what to do anymore. Have GF. She can't stop spending money. Just finished having dinner at a restaurant for the 7th night in a row. Always finds a way to make it look spontaneous. Example, oh, can you come pick me up from work? I'm not feeling well. When I get there, she's laughing with her friends and telling me they've all arranged to have dinner at an expensive restaurant and tells them that I've already agreed. On Wednesday, she bought tickets to go to a beach town for the weekend. It's not even a special weekend. It's a regular one. What the fuck? Why'd you do that? We can't afford it. It's a once-a-lifetime deal. I couldn't miss it. She only bought plane tickets, didn't bother booking a hotel room. I had to do it, or the tickets would have gone to waste. Relaxing in the hotel 5 minutes ago. Ask her to give me the plane tickets for safekeeping. Notice the return flight is on Monday at 11 a.m. I have to be at the office at 8 a.m. and it's a 1-hour trip from the airport. What the fuck? Oops, sorry, I didn't check. Just calling sick, LMAO. Gonna have to buy new return tickets and spend even more money. Relationships are a meme. 11 years ago, be me, Navajo Indian in high school. Classroom is 99% white kids and me. Teacher is a new age white woman who believes quartzo stones were magical. Get told that I could go outside and reconnect with nature whenever I felt overwhelmed. I was the only one with that privilege. Constantly take advantage of it to skip classes. So she basically thought that I was like a fairy that had to periodically connect with nature to regain my strength because somehow she thinks that math is too hard for Navajos. That was racist, but also thoughtful of her. I miss that woman and her aura reading abilities. It was very stupid. And then you got this guy, Anon. No real name, just Anon. What are you, part of the royal family now? And he can do anything in his life, but he chooses to stay online all day. All day! He's got the little monitor and the little mouse, and he's clicking, he's getting into the little fights, and that's why they call him Anon. Because he just goes on, and on, and on. That's gold, Jerry! Gold!
Bro, I'm lucky so badly.
Be me. Girlfriend just went through labor. She named our newborn daughter Velveeta. I wish I was kidding. I have a daughter named after mac and cheese, Velveeta. If you see this in 17 years, I'm sorry. Be me, 33 years old, 6'1", reasonably fit, full head of hair, starting to go gray around the sideburns. Go to bar, see cute girl drinking, apparently alone. Ask her if she'd like some company. She replies that that's so cute, and that I remind her of her grandfather who also hits on everything in a dress. Is this the end? Be me, incel. Experience nothing but rejection and vitriol from women. Closest I've ever gotten to a woman would be random feminons from 4chan, and they either ghost me or friendzone me. Hop on Grindr because I'm bored and want to see if I can fuck a trapper police. That face would get added by shit tons of older men, and they ask me if they can fuck me or feminize me because I apparently have a girly face. Pick related is how I feel like. Should I have a femboy twink arc, bros? I've been edging for 10 days straight. Liquid fast. I'm starting to lose sense of feeling in my penis, but I'm smarter than most to know that I cannot break my edge streak. This ascension has been a hard journey. On day 5, my mother, whom I live with, began to bang on my door, crying for me to come out and eat with the family. Foolish woman, for she doesn't understand the importance of my edging ascension. My father has referred to me as a stay-at-home deadbeat loser. He doesn't know the importance of the edge fast. On day 8, friends of mine called to check up on me. They claimed I was clinically insane and needed help. All have broken contact with me for various reasons, most of whom have claimed safety of themselves and their family. My girlfriend, baby mother, has placed a restraining order, what even is that, on me. She claimed I was a danger to her and our 6-month-old son. Day 9 was the roughest of days. The government is seeking me out to be immediately restrained for being a danger to public safety. I ran away from home that day, but I stayed true to myself and edged even at the hardest of times. I've already messaged my friends and family, and now ex-girlfriend that I will be ascending soon on my 15th day edging streak. Soon they will know what I am doing this for. I hope my son will follow in my footsteps. See you on the
there
other
we
side,
go, finally.
And signing out.
God damn, I'm not fast enough. This game is lagging too much. I reckon that body swap amazingly.
The best present ever? That's too big for a PlayStation game.
Power.
Heihachi Mishima is completely dead.
What video game means the most to you? If you're lucky enough, or at least young enough, you likely grew up with video games in one way or another.
Dude,
Nostalgia is one hell of a drug.
Okay,
It's
I don't
very
know.
easy for most of us to remember fondly of some of the first video games we've ever played. Whether it was a hand-me-down console you got from older siblings, playing at a friend's house, or maybe even your cousins, we all have
Dude, thank God I don't want to play. The overdue collapse of the 9-to-5 job.
Companies are doing mass layoffs while complaining about not being able to find enough employees. Some workers are min-maxing the system by working multiple full-time jobs at the same time, while others need to work hours of unpaid
Find somebody
overtime
else,
at
bro.
just one
I just
job.
can't.
This is not to mention that the gig economy is consuming entire sections of the workforce. The 9-to-5 was created by American labor unions in the 1800s and became mainstream over 100 years ago, when jobs looked like this and this. It was revolutionary for its time. But how many of the modern
We need
problems
something
in
new
corporate America
revolutionary.
are caused by trying to make an outdated system fit with every single modern job?
To the U.S., 8.4 million people in the nation are working multiple jobs.
850,000 jobs. Wages
Go
went
serve
up for American
Biden, son.
workers.
Instead, they're working multiple jobs. It's called being overemployed.
One part-time, but I need both of them to pay my bills every month, my rent and groceries, so just working all the time.
A report by the management consulting firm McKinsey & Company found that 2/3 of the average human's wealth is in the work they can do over their lifetime. Everybody has time, effort, and experience they can trade for money, and those tradable commodities are worth twice as much as all the other assets that the average person possesses. A regular 9-to-5 job has been a great way for billions of people to safely exchange a predictable amount of their time for a predictable paycheck, with predictable career advancement as they gain more experience. But this one-size-fits-all model for work doesn't fit with every job, and trying to make it work has been bad for employees and bad for companies for 3 reasons, which is causing 3 equally terrible trends in the job market. The first trend is that it makes time a worthless asset. The Ford Motor Company was one of the first businesses in America to adopt the 9-to-5 40-hour work week. Henry Ford did this to make his company the most attractive place for auto workers to get a job. This allowed him to pull talent away from other automakers without paying his workers more. In order to compete with Ford, other automakers were forced to offer the same 40-hour work week with paid overtime. Eventually, in order to compete with the automakers, other companies were also forced to offer 9-to-5 jobs so that their best workers didn't quit and go and work on the car assembly line. These auto workers had tightly defined and repetitive tasks, so unless the workers succumbed to exhaustion, they could do a consistent amount of work for every hour they spent at their post, and every additional hour would produce the same amount of output. If you work in a modern office job, you will know that your work is nothing like this. Sometimes there is a lot to do, and sometimes there is nothing to do, but you still need to be there 8 hours a day looking busy no matter what. Back when the 40-hour week was being fought for by workers' unions, most Americans worked in manufacturing. But today, most people work in the services sector, which is more diverse than you might expect. Unless you are working on a farm or in a factory, you are a service worker, and your job could be anything from making strategic corporate decisions to making coffees. Clearly, these jobs are very different, and should have a different schedule. But most of the corporate world has tried to make the 9-to-5 fit all jobs. But this doesn't work, because no service jobs have tasks consistently delivered on a fine-tuned production line. Work comes and goes as internal and external customers make demands, and that means when people are busy and need to do more than 8 hours in a day to finish their work, they are expected to work, quote, reasonable unpaid overtime. According to an ADP Research Institute study of office professionals, unpaid overtime jumped to an average of 9.2 hours per week in 2021. More than a full extra day to keep up with employer demands. But when there is little to no work to do because a project has just been completed or sales are seasonally slow, workers are still expected to put in the 40 hours a week because that's what the business is paying them for. If you're in this kind of job, your best option is to try and find something that makes you look busy. But if you don't have something to work on, you are probably going to be given meaningless tasks just to fill the mandatory 8-hour day. If this was just another story about companies screwing over their workers with outdated business practices, it wouldn't need a video. But the 40-hour work week isn't even good for companies. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why we might be in the midst of the overdue collapse of the 9-to-5. This week's lesson was sponsored by Manscaped. It's time to throw away that bulky beard trimmer you've been using for years and make an upgrade, because Manscaped is going full head-to-toe grooming with their Beard Hedger Pro Kit. With a powerful 7,200 RPM motor and titanium-coated T-blade, this trimmer is strong enough to tackle the thickest of hair you'll find on your face, neck, and chest. Whether you prefer a 5 o'clock shadow or a tame lion's mane, it comes with 20 precision length settings so you can customize your perfect beard length and style. This beard trimmer is waterproof and cordless, so it's a great tool for trimming in the shower or over the sink with virtually no messy cleanup. It gets up to 60 minutes of charge and has a 3-level charge indicator, letting you know when it needs some juice. Manscaped also created dermatologist-tested beard care products to help you grow and nourish a wonderful beard like beard oil, beard balm, beard conditioner, and more. Get your hands on the Beard Hedger Pro. Head over to manscaped.com/howmoneyworks today and get 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code HMW at checkout. Join over 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped today. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, McKinsey & Company, and compiled by Statista, growth in gig work and freelance jobs have outgrown typical permanent jobs by 500% over the last decade. Gig work apps have become very popular with unskilled workers due to their low barrier to entry and flexible working arrangements. Someone with a phone and a bike can start working for a food delivery service like Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash, Grubhub, or all of them all at the same time in less than an hour by filling out an online form. This has been a highly appealing alternative to minimum wage jobs that still rely on the antiquated process of handing in a resume, spending weeks doing job interviews, only to still get ghosted by a fast food joint offering $7.25 an hour for an unpredictable schedule. Gig work jobs usually also pay terribly, but people get to work as much as they want, when they want, and they can work around another full-time job for extra money. Even with all of the problems of gig work, you can see why it has become so popular. The popularity of freelancing and private contracting has also exploded. This is more popular among skilled workers who can sell their services to businesses just like an employee, but with no ongoing agreement. They are only paid when there is work to be done. Private contracts are usually an agreed-upon price for an agreed-upon outcome, like $10,000 to build a company website, but they can also be billed hourly for roles like security, administrative assistance, or on-demand workers. According to a report by the management consulting firm Oliver Wyman, healthcare workers have been one of the fastest-growing groups of workers ditching typical permanent roles in favor of working as private contractors. On-call nurses, doctors, and hospital support staff already work unpredictable hours, so they don't sacrifice much by working as contractors instead of a direct employee. According to the report, some nurses have elected to work in the temporary staffing market so they can take on fewer hours, as mental health has become a top priority for workers in the industry. Private contractors in all industries are usually paid more for their time than permanent employees because the business only pays for the hours of services they actually need, which means most of the time their total output will be lower. With mass layoffs dominating the news cycle, people are also finding out the hard way that if they work in an at-will employment state, their 9-to-5 doesn't give them much security anyway. So, workers at all skill levels are seeing they can make more, and businesses are realizing they can cut down on expenses by doing away with the rigid 9-to-5 workday, which is the second reason it's slowly becoming a relic of corporate history. But the death of the 9-to-5 is not going to be a good deal for everybody. Unfortunately for now, businesses are going to be the biggest winners out of this shift, even if they have to pay their contractors and gig workers slightly more per hour. The first loss is benefits. If you work as a private contractor,
I literally
you are
can't
becoming
fucking
your
play
own
this
boss, which means that
19
even though
frames,
you're
bro,
making more money,
exactly.
there is overhead that you become responsible for.
Exactly.
Benefits like paid time off, training, retirement plans,
Yeah, I
and
literally
health
can't play
insurance
this.
are going to come out of your pocket. Health insurance through a regular employer is
Exactly.
normally far more affordable than private options. For gig
Nobody
workers,
wants
this can be
to- dude,
especially
I
tough
think-
because health
I don't
insurance
think it's a good
premiums for
idea
people
right
who
now.
ride motorized scooters through late-night traffic to
I
deliver
don't- I
food
really
to
don't
people's
think it's a
homes
good
is
idea
simply
playing it right
unaffordable
now.
on the income of a delivery driver. Even if you are
It's
doing
either
highly
me
skilled
or
contracting,
it's
if you
the,
don't manage these expenses carefully,
it's
you will
the,
end up with
what's it
less
called?
in your pocket than if you just stuck with a regular permanent position.
them,
And
most
your
likely.
loss is their gain. According to a survey conducted by Forbes,
I
small
cannot
and
play
medium
that, to be
enterprises were
honest.
hiring more contract workers because
looks
it
like
simplified their accounting
fucking
and reduced
slideshow
the
or some shit like
ever-increasing
that.
expenses of human resource management. It's not just small companies either. According to CNBC, contract workers have outnumbered direct employees at Google and other large tech companies since 2018, and the ratio became even more skewed
on
during
PC.
COVID. Google already has large human
Alright, time to play
resources and
this guy.
accounting departments, so they are pursuing contract work
I
for
hope
two other
nothing bad
reasons.
happens.
The first is that the most
I think it
talented
might be me,
engineers
dude.
have realized that they can make more money working off one-off projects for lots of companies than they could by being a full-time employee with just one company. The demand for talent during the
Pretty sure
good
you can
times
upgrade
meant
to
that these
rollback
companies
already?
just had to pay what
Wait,
these top
what do you
engineers were
mean?
asking.
Wait,
Some highly
what do you mean by
specialized
rollback?
engineers could bill up to $10,000 an hour for their work to these companies. Even for a company as rich as
How do
Google,
I do
it was
that?
better to pay them only for the hours. They really needed them, instead of paying them millions of dollars a year as a permanent salary for the odd project where their skills would be needed. The second reason is that during bad times, like right now, getting rid of contractors doesn't count as layoffs, so companies can easily cut expenses without technically laying off any staff. Big layoffs signal to investors and other employees
Rollback
that the
was out?
business is in a bad shape, and
I
that they
think
would
it's
be
been
better
out for a
off
while.
investing their money or building a career somewhere
I
else.
think you can play with the games
There
that
are three
updated.
groups that are really going to benefit from the death of the 9-to-5, but their gain is all at the expense of one big group that statistically you are a part of, the regular workers. Entry-level workers who can get gig work are not paid well, but they weren't paid well in minimum wage jobs either. They have just gained some flexibility to work when they want.
Probably why it's
High-skilled
19
workers who
frames.
can move to contract roles can make a lot of money by working for the highest bidding company. They only lost the idea of job security that
A
never
cracked
really existed for them
rollback?
anyway. Companies are
Oh,
also
the
taking
official
full
rollback
advantage
is
of
out
the death of
today.
the 9-to-5 by cutting down on their biggest expense center.
Bro, what?
Losers
There's a
are
crack?
regular workers right in the middle who are in
There's
roles
a
that can't
fucking
be
crack
gigified,
mod.
but aren't in demand enough to be contracted out. The fixed
Even the
expenses of
fucking
operating as a
people who play the
contractor,
game for
health
free get
insurance,
better
business
service,
licensing,
bruh.
accounting, and everything else means it's only worth it for people earning well over the
That's
average
crazy.
wage. If you are earning $60,000 as a
Okay, come
permanent
on, SP.
employee, you would have to charge $80,000 a year as a contractor to break even. And not many businesses are going to pay that $20,000 premium for a standard job. New regulations intended to protect contractors
Can't
and
beat them.
workers are another problem. If a contractor files for
Can wait
unemployment
and allow
after
that
their job is
emulated
completed with a
debate
company,
rollback
they can file an
experience.
SS8 form with the IRS, which can trigger an audit to determine if that contractor and other contractors working for the company meet the requirements to be counted as a permanent employee. If they do, then the company has to cover their unemployment benefits and has to provide other benefits to every other contractor in the business as well. Businesses don't want to take that risk, so they use staffing agencies to handle all the compliance for them. According to
even know
data from the
people could
American
have
Staffing
mods in this game.
Association,
Ugh.
most contractors now work through middleman
All right.
staffing companies. For contractors working through these middlemen, it can combine all of the problems of permanent employment with none of the benefits of being a private contractor. And that's the third reason why the 9-to-5 is going extinct. It lets companies pull some creative business maneuvers. The aged care industry has been one of the biggest victims of this shift. Go and watch my latest video on the deadly monetization of nursing homes to see how contract staffing is being used as a tool to maximize returns on a failing business model.
Oh shit!
As someone
Survived
who's
that
done
because of
contracting
lag.
work time to time in the finance space, I will be writing an article on how to make the most out of these risky roles over on my totally free email newsletter Compounded Daily. So make sure to sign up.
Oh no, I
with the link
can't
below
flip that
to keep
one.
on learning
Oh fuck! I
all
fell for it.
works.
Ooh, get it. Bruh. I wish I
Doesn't mean
was
anything to
faster.
be working class or middle class anymore. The only thing
Mash
that
on
matters
them?
is if you own a home or if you don't.
What do you think I'm
The home
doing?
you live in now statistically makes more money than you do. And the last hope that a lot of young people have to catch up is getting a house gifted to them by a relative. Which begs
Almost.
the question, what
Almost.
happens to the real estate market when all the boomers die?
Anyone looking to buy a home right now is facing
I
a
don't
double
care about the
challenge
boomers
amid
right
the
now.
Federal
Let me
Reserve's
switch the
effort
video while I get beat up. What happens when all the boomers die? Oh, well, they did. Let's see. Freedom Black Pantsu. But what's the video for? I don't know, so I can watch it and then like you get bored sometimes. You know, you gotta do connection isn't stay. I know, thank you for telling me. It's just hold up. But yeah, just a second watch something. Low attention span, you know. I like to do two things by once. Two things at once.
Good evening, R9K. I'm going to tell you all a story, one that I hope you'll enjoy. Feel
Actually,
free to
I don't want to
ask
hear the
any-
story right now. This is not it. Everything in life is just a routine. Okay, buddy. So 2 hours of oh, I got another match. Bro, I'm gonna fucking I'm gonna oh, whatever. Screw it. Hold up. Okay, I wanna hear some fighting.
Folks, if you play a lot of fighting.
No! Red connection? Yeah, dude. I'm going in. It says here, I think everything is going to be red till tomorrow. What the fuck, dude? Should I just get on Guilty Gear then? How do you know this? It says here, Rollback is coming out tomorrow. Oh. Yeah, bro, it's like consistently 19 frames. Like perma 19. Everybody has 19 frames. Update the Twitter by the official. Let me see. Hello. Let's see. Motherfucking Twitter. Wait, fighters, Twitter. So give me some FGC scene stuff. Bro, if I play Strive and it's still the same thing, then that means it's just 100% my connection is dog right now. I mean, it seems like it's alright. Hold up, give me 1 second. It's okay. I played this last time. Tekken World Tournament. A message from Dragon Ball Z. Should I just get the mod then? That helps me put rollback. But I need to crack the game though. Balance patch, netco rollback. Bro, this was like in 2023. This was last year. Is that when they announced it? Good. Okay, hold up. I'm gonna get one more match in. If that one lags too, I'm just gonna switch to Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear Strive. Oddly enough. Oh no, yeah. Rollback update's literally coming out tomorrow. The Twitter of Dragon Ball games. Guilty Gear Strive is the Twitter of Dragon Ball games. I don't know. I don't have anything else. I have what am I supposed to play? Like I got let's see. I could play Street Fighter 5, but I don't have that game because it's not on sale yet. I have Blaze Blue. I have Blaze Blue. What else do I have on here? Oh, the cross tag battle. Oh, and I got Grand Blue, that one. Oh, I got Tekken. It's installed. Tekken. Fighters is the only game that I actually like, though. Or actually can... Oh, I can play Guilty Gear, kind of. The only reason I like this game is because I won the locals. Plus, my shit works for some reason. Whenever somebody plays me, they're like, why does your shit work? And you're doing some scrub shit. I'm like, I don't know, man. It just works for me. It just fucking works. Alright, I need to go look for another video. Let's see. Reviewing the best motion input. Street Fighters 4 on the Nintendo 3DS. Oh boy. I pretend to be... I like this one, actually. Let's see. Let's see what this is.
Hey everyone, this is Duckus. Today I'm going to be going on Discord and pretending to be
Hey
a
guys,
yandere
today
girl.
I'm going to be a Discord
I didn't know
girl.
what a yandere was until about 10 minutes ago when I had no ideas for a video, so I decided to look it up.
Buddy.
Yeah.
Sure you did, buddy.
This is gonna be real
I had no
cringe.
idea what
Now,
that
something
is.
tells me I probably need to change my name from Booty Alt to something else. So, alright, this is my profile. My name's gonna be Miki. Hi, don't ever get out of my sight.
This guy's voice
I
is
told you
horrible,
guys
I'm
it's
just gonna
gonna be
leave.
bad. I'm gonna search Date Me. I've been on Date Me before, like a couple days ago. It's
Of
taking
course
a
you
little
did.
too long to verify. I could probably just suck my own. Oh, okay, never mind. You guys should be glad I did not finish that sentence. What's your gender? She, her. Choose your age. I'll be a little kitty. I'll be
Yeah, I
fun.
don't know
Why'd
that
I
much
say
right
it
now.
like that?
This guy
That
better
makes
use
me
a voice
sound like
changer.
a
This guy's
predator.
female
Jesus.
voice is
Yo,
horrible.
low-key though, why is
Well, I'm
the
skipping
server
this.
not taken down yet? Okay, I'm just gonna copy this person's layout and put my own shit in there. Alright. Single. Oh, do you? What is with these? Yo, it is a dick. Masturbate to me talking to them, I guess. I can be your overprotective.
Dude, this shit is actually real, I'm not gonna lie. I had one of my friends go on Discord, and they went on one of these e-dating servers, and they literally sent me out the screenshots. This shit is fucking real, dude. There are actually people that are like this.
The same
Uh,
Yo, W bio, by the way. I forgot what I put in there. Oh, fuck me. I volunteer as tribute. Yo, what is this guy do? What is going on there? Homie
Man's
looks like
just
me if I
looking
haven't
for,
washed my hair in a week.
Hi, are you positive? I'm sort of a yandere.
Good day. I thought he said gay for a second. I was about to say I'm straight as a dick.
Are you calling me gay? How dare you?
this is
Hello.
It's not as funny as I thought it would be.
See you. All right, bet. Let's show him a pic. Yo, no cap. This is me. What is that shit over here? Hi, I'm looking for that too. I'm 16 years old. Nice to meet you. Looking for a relationship. Sorry. Well, TWGS1. I'm actually 17, so this doesn't count as me being like a predator.
Hi, I'm a yandere.
Yes. If you treat me good, I don't need any others.
You won't be able to have a choice. I'll kill any other girl who looks.
Let me pause this. This is... That is unwatchable. That is fucking unwatchable. I'm sorry. Ah, finally a match. Hopefully it's not... Okay. Alright. Back for the search. The ultimate in the legal video game iceberg. 10 years in prison. That video is way too long. And the view is nice from down there. The dark side of Roblox. Oh boy. Okay, actually, I kind of want to watch
Roblox
this one.
needs no introduction. It's a platform with millions of users, majority of which are kids, with all of its games being user-generated. Going to the front page of Roblox, it's pretty obvious that a lot of these games are marketed to younger players. However, if you look deep enough, there's a community of privately hosted servers filled with NSFW content, and today we'll be exploring.
Bro, I have played Roblox for the fucking longest time since I was a child. I have never ran into one of those.
I wasn't familiar as
I
to
just
what
don't
it
think
was,
I was
so
that kind of
decided to
kid.
explore YouTube to see if there was any videos talking about these condos. And I did find a few from creators such as Green Lego Cats.
Bro, I fucking like playing with the airplanes or like fucking anime battles or some shit like that.
A myriad of condo games and Discord servers. These videos have links.
There's literal fucking
condo
kids
games,
going,
however,
yo, I
some of
wanna
them
live
are
in a
just
condo.
meme links, which are basically phishing links designed to trick people into logging in with their Roblox account, in turn hacking it.
Oh yeah, I
into
had
the
one of those happen
items.
to me.
Even
I
turning
was
the
just
beam
too
links
big
into
brain to ever fall for that.
Roblox.com links are dead ends, since thankfully Roblox has been cracking down on these games. One thing I noticed about these videos is that they tend to feature new and still working in the title and even the date, leading me to believe that they're constantly being uploaded in order to
Hold
keep
up,
people
am I in the
up to
right
date with the newest
server?
servers and games, which does in fact seem to be the case. If you look up Roblox condos and sort by newest, you'll see a bunch of these videos. From my experience, the videos directly linking to condo games are usually just scams and contain beam links, but the ones with active Discord servers that have channels dedicated to advertising public condos are
Oh, I'm in
legit.
fucking
I'm not sure how many
Mexico,
condo
no
servers are out
wonder.
there. I assume there's a good amount, but allow me to show you some of the ones that I found.
Dude, no fucking wonder. I was in Mexico the entire time. Hold up, we're going back to America. Yo, no wonder the fucking servers are empty. Holy shit, dude. This is amazing.
Servers in particular called Kai's Condos. But before we do so, a lot of degeneracy takes place on Discord. So as we dive into this, I have one request.
Alright, now we're gonna probably get matches.
Promise me that you'll have my back in case anything happens.
Jesus Christ, I remember, like, I had to wait, like, the longest fucking time. And I was like, why is Dragon Ball so dead? I just thought the game was, like, gonna die or some shit like that.
Now dive into the world.
Oh, well, at least tomorrow we get net back. I mean, rollback. I mean, rollback, net code. Yeah.
Dear Discord, we do not condone any selling, uses, creating of cheats. This server is mainly for Roblox games that are hard to find, which aren't harmful or dangerous at all. Okay. So maybe no one's getting physically harmed or as a result of the explicit games within Roblox, which is a game that kids mainly play, and out of the hundreds of members within the server, at least some are bound to be minors. Not to mention, I only found out about this server because of this Roblox group that was alongside the game being promoted in a larger Discord server with thousands of members, which again, some are bound to be underage. So in my humble opinion, I think these games have the potential to be pretty dangerous and harmful. A lot of gaming happens on Discord, and there's even one example of the owner of Rate My Avatar, who owns the accounts YVR and names are important on Roblox, also going by the name Dang It on Discord, attempting to get a 14-year-old girl to join a condo game. I'll link the video going more in depth on this topic, but let's
yo,
our community is always
dude, fucking, dude, they need to like fucking ban like any type of interaction between developers and motherfucking player base.
And if you wish to take the server down for
like some type of secure pod where they just can't see each other.
As we can sort out any problems
like it needs to be like a glass panel, like a virtual glass panel.
Before the entire server was revamped, and as a matter of fact, the Discord account of the owner of the server was hacked, so they ended up moving servers to this one. The server still goes by the same name, Kai's Condos, but anyways, it was an admittedly pretty dumb disclaimer given the games being promoted in the server go directly against Roblox's terms of service, and the fact that they said that these games weren't harmful nor dangerous just shows their ignorance as to why condo games are TOS in the first place, as these NSFW games can potentially lead to grooming and such, since Roblox's player base is made up of mostly kids. Now I'll admit, a lot of the things that needed to be age restricted were on the previous version of the server, and going to the revamped version of the old server they still were and still continue to be on the new server. I'm unable to enter certain channels since I set my profile up as a 13-year-old, but this is extremely easy to bypass. Let's say I'm actually 13 years old and I want to see what's in the NSFW channels. All I would have to do is create a new Discord account, set my birth date to like 1999 or something, and I would have access. Now I feel uncomfortable going into any of these NSFW channels since they could potentially feature minors, especially in the Kai channel, since according to Kai's profile they're 17. And before I show you some of my footage of these condo games, I want
always
to
some dude named Kai, bruh.
Kai has and their actual
if you're Kai, you're just a predator. Sorry.
And this is Kai's Roblox account, with an admittedly freaking pretty cringy avatar. Now that you're aware of Kai's Discord servers that were and are promoting links to these disgusting NSFW condo games which go against Roblox's terms of service, on top of that, you're also aware of the Roblox group associated with said server and the Roblox account. With all of that being said, let's now dive into one of these games and see what type of degeneracy resides within them.
Man has to go with incognito. Gotta make sure. You gotta make sure I'm not being tracked by the FBI now. Prison. You know what? I kind of want to go on these now. Like explore what the fuck is going. How old?
While doing my research for this video, I joined
First
my
thing it
fair share of
asked,
condo
Dro.
games, all of which pose this question: how old are you? And right off
No,
the bat,
don't answer
the
that.
fact
Just
that
put like
able
you're
to set your
20.
age to 16
I
is
put you
already
like
a bit
8 or some
alarming,
shit.
And although I don't have any footage, I've joined games where the lowest age you could select was 13. I then came across a player going by the name I'm 14 and excited who messaged me. We then had the following conversation.
Hey, are you only 14?
Oh, this is disturbing.
How old are you?
Oh no! He's grooming children!
On this game, and why do you want to have sex in Roblox? Whoa. Isn't it on now? I guess. I mean, I don't do this often. We're too young for this.
Dude, I haven't got a match yet.
I thought about it.
Mexico has more odds of getting matches in Mexico than in here.
I don't think this is good for us. This is degenerate. We're too young. You're right.
Yeah, I'm skipping this part. This is really dumb.
I'm glad I can convince him to leave.
Oh, there it is.
And I hope he never comes back to these.
Bro, he's gonna probably just go on the other server.
Just imagine if it wasn't me who he talked to though, and it was someone who actually was willing to engage with him in Roblox, who doesn't care about his age. Things could have potentially been taken further. We conversed privately using the whisper command, meaning no one could see what we were talking about, and who knows what could have potentially happened had I not convinced him.
Finally.
Someone could have gotten
Oh,
into
it's
contact with him
another,
outside of the game via Discord or other means, and who knows? He could have been moved, or maybe other worse things could have happened. I want to wrap this video up with a message to both Roblox and Discord. Please, look into these servers, groups, and users mentioned in this video hosting content within Roblox that could potentially be dangerous to minors and that are against Roblox's terms of service. Now, I know that in this video I only talked about Kai's condos, but I decided to highlight this one in particular because I think it's a good example of a condo community that's sad. Condos through these Gate will continue to exist even if we do fight for these things to be removed. Go read a book if you're able to. Worth your much for watching. And know that Kai is no longer uploading condo games.
Time to watch the effects of child neglect.
Trauma. It's a word that's thrown around a ton on the internet nowadays, but it can manifest itself in all types of different forms. Maybe you've endured a bad relationship that's led you to developing some trust issues,
Or maybe you just
or
for too
perhaps
long.
you've had your fair share of bullies growing up. Well, what about being neglected as a child to the point that your parents can't see you for who you are? I was a bit specific on that last one, but that's because it perfectly describes a short film known simply as Opal. It debuted on Halloween Day of 2020 on the all-too-famous Adult Swim.
Dude, if
It was
Steam
created
updated
by
their
this
little
man,
thing,
Jack
fucking kudos
Stauber.
to them. That shit looks
If
nice.
you've
It looks very
somehow never
clean.
heard of Jack Stauber, he's famous for his signature sound profile. This very original, weird, and loud sound that seems to resonate with a ton of people. At the very least, you had to have heard at least one of these songs. But we're not here to talk about his other accomplishments. We're here to talk about this, Opal, a 12-minute short that, despite its small length, manages to pack an entire story and history of childhood trauma that has been pent up in this tortured, poor child. In the short, you get to see this character struggle to cope with a dysfunctional family made up of a complete narcissist, a dying smoker, and an alcoholic mother. The short begins with a quite nice piano melody that introduces us to the three
Maybe
main
one day I'll
major
get a
events
match.
that this character will encounter throughout the entire short. These cigarettes from the old grandfather, the mirrors of the narcissistic man, and the pills and alcohol from an older woman. After showing us these three scenes, we fly through a window as we cut to a house on the other side of the street. Inside, we are greeted with a family singing a song to their daughter, who seems to be named Opal. The song is entirely about seeing their daughter, with each character saying one line about how they can see Opal.
There she is.
That's my girl. Hi, Opal!
Opal is then given a burger and randomly decides to just dance with it, presumably because she doesn't know what to do with it. Now let's take a note of this right now because this will be important later. Opal's attention is then directed across the street as we see a darker, creepier looking house, which her parents then interrupt with a quick lyric about not worrying about the house across the street.
Don't mind the house across the street, Opal. It's not where your attention ought to be, Opal.
Opal is sent to bed early but decides to sneak out and see what's up with the house across the street. Opal's attention is brought to the upstairs of the home with a beautiful piece of music playing that can only be described as unsettling yet heavenly. As she makes her way to the front door, she is scared by a bunch of lights shining on her, which forces her to rush inside. This catches the attention of this blind man, asking her to bring her his cigarettes, noting the following.
Claire, is that you? Come here, I need you to bring me my cigarettes. Don't think about hiding them again either. I know it's you who's doing that.
Then we break into an absolute banger of a musical number where the man begins to sing a song about how it must be easy to breathe on TV. And you know what? Why even explain it when we can just sit here and vibe?
Alright.
Why does it sound so easy to breathe on TV? I can't see why it sounds so easy to breathe. I'm popular here.
We get more insight into the man as throughout the song we see his struggle with health as he uses television to cope with his current health condition, using cigarettes and TV as an escape from this drastic condition that he finds himself in. As the song comes to an end, the grandpa notes that this is not her granddaughter Claire, and this leads to Opal rushing out of the room as the grandpa is yelling at her to get out, leading to our next encounter. As she makes her way to the hallway, we see her attention brought to this doorway, which is met with the same beautiful music from earlier when we saw the window from outside. Just then, she is interrupted by this man in a room full of mirrors, who begins talking entirely about himself. This entire scene, the man basically has a conversation with himself, never allowing the kid to even get a single word in, moving so fast from point to point, comparing himself to the kid, even insulting her ankles and saying that he's glad he doesn't have them.
I actually look really good in there. I don't have your ankles on it. Nothing against them. I do. Sorry, my brain.
It's kind of unsettling how the music jumps from scary suspense to airy and cheerful within seconds of each other, which I will come and talk about later. Just as this combo is coming to an end, he cuts to a musical number about his personal insecurities and overt narcissism. With tons of references to how beautiful and godly his skin is, noting that life is just a costume away, clearly putting emphasis on the fact that this man has had some deep event in his life that has led him down this path of constantly being on edge about his physical appearance, to the point that he now sits in a reflection chamber, a metaphor on how caught up in his own life the father is. As this musical number comes to an end, the grandfather comes up, scaring Opal, which forces her to run into the next door, shutting it closed. A hand then suddenly grabs her legs, which appears to be from this woman, who is clearly a drunk. The older woman begins stating how terrible she feels, telling Opal that women like her and Opal just survive.
Oh, how I predicted.
The woman begins singing a song about how she needs her little girl to take care of her.
I think I won.
This scene then goes out of whack, and Opal manages to get away from the situation, running upstairs to the safe haven that we've seen alluded to in the entire short. She finally gets upstairs.
I won by
to this
playing
room
2
and
minutes
locks
to the
door
future.
by pushing a chair up against it. It's during this scene that the viewer is then hit with the realization that Opal isn't actually the name of this character. Her name is actually Claire. Claire being the name that everyone in the household has been calling her by. The name Opal comes from this billboard named Opal's Burgers, and
Does
on
this guy
it we
wanna play
see
it?
the main family from earlier in the beginning of the shorts. A manic realization begins to set into Opal after she has to come to terms with the fact that she has a real family that is completely unlike the fake family from earlier. Amidst all of this pain and suffering, she manages to tuck her head into her lap and force her mind to escape the reality that she's in, with her fake family singing to her, presumably calming her down. We then zoom out of her fantasy, seeing that it's all in her head, as the family in the real house needlessly bangs on her door, wanting attention from her. Zooming out so much, revealing that there was never a house across the street, further confirming it's all in her head. The amazing thing about this short is the small
Okay, I'll be
amount
back.
of details that add to the overall theme. Claire is the byproduct of a truly neglectful family. One of the biggest symbolisms in Opal is the fact that none of her family sees her. The grandfather is quite literally blind, so he's unable to see her. The mirror man, which is her father, is so caught up in his own life that any small sliver of a chance at seeing his daughter is met with him readjusting his mirrors, which I took literally and figuratively, with the adjusting of the mirrors possibly referencing to how adults will reinforce their priorities and leave the kids at the bottom of that list. And then we see her mom, a deprived alcoholic druggie that doesn't want a daughter for normal motherly reasons. She wants a daughter that she can use as a therapist, someone to go to with her struggles, completely flipping the parent-kid dynamic on its head. Usually we see the parent taking care of the child, but in all cases of Claire interacting with her family, it's Claire taking care of them. She talks her mom through her obvious depressions and relapses. She gives unnecessary attention to her dad, who just talks to himself the whole time, and is constantly used by the grandpa just to get his cigarettes. While we're on the topic of the grandpa, watching the short film for the first time, this small line might slip past you.
Claire, is that you?
But watching it a second time, you'll realize that the grandpa genuinely doesn't recognize his own granddaughter, which is far more disturbing than the initial reaction you might see at first glance. And all of this has a drastically disturbing effect on Claire herself. She's so neglected by her parents physically that she is also clearly malnourished, as when you compare her looks to the kid on the billboard, it's almost obvious how not well fed she is. And what's more disheartening is the fact that it makes sense when you spill out the facts. Her mother is unfit to take care of her due to being an addict. The grandfather can barely take care of himself, so how is he supposed to take care of Claire? And the father only really cares about himself, so who is left to take care of her? No one. Even smaller details such as the way that she walks inside. The way that she walks inside the first time around, you might think that everyone in the house is asleep because she's basically tiptoeing her way throughout her household. Now, I relate to this on a super close level because I grew up with parents that I just didn't want to interact with because of how I was treated. You learn to step quiet to avoid the riot and chaos of having to deal with your parent or any adult that you're living with. In this case, Claire makes her way carefully throughout the house because she very much doesn't want to interact with her family. She just wants to make her way to her safe haven, which is her lonely room at the top of the house. This is why we keep seeing those sequences where this music plays. It's because that's Claire's only real way to be safe in her own home. She has to make this long, venturous journey each time she wants to go inside her house, and it shows. The amount of horror and shock on her face when any adult in the short chooses to talk to her shows us the amount of anxiety and social issues that she must have developed. And if you don't believe this, just take a look at what Claire's favorite pastime is. The beginning of the short begins with Claire with her fake family, but she's not in her room daydreaming. Based on the ending, we know for a fact that she's outside looking up at the billboard. And this little detail of the lights turning on is implying that it's nighttime and the billboard lights have finally come on. All of this means that Claire's favorite pastime is to walk outside of her house, sit down, look up, and fantasize about leaving her troubles that could be miles away. This is why Claire is in such a panic when the lights come on, because she doesn't want to have to deal with the reality of her living situation. Even when she's in her room towards the end of the film, she covers up the lights from the billboard in her mind with these burgers, using them to hide the fact that she's daydreaming about a simple burger joint. Seeing the kid in the picture with their fake family, wishing that she was them instead. And that's where there's even more disturbing details. I noted at the beginning of this video that this sequence where she dances with the burger is extremely important, and it is. That entire 2 minutes at the beginning tells us more than enough about Claire's current psyche. Let's take another listen to what each family member tells Claire in the beginning.
There she is.
That's my girl.
Hi, Opal.
Notice how none of them imply that they're trying to take care of her, with the grandpa not even saying anything besides hi. This is because Claire is so far gone in her relationship with her family that she just wants to be seen as a person. This is why when she's given the burger, she has no understanding of what to do with it. She is not aware that she's supposed to eat the burger, and she doesn't know how to be grateful
Oh yeah, I
for
forgot.
food because
None of the floors work in this game
never
for me.
been given the opportunity to. So she dances with it because in her mind, that's what makes sense. And what ties this entire message together is the beautiful musical number.
We see you, Opal, your troubles are miles away. We see you.
Bruh, fucking hell, dude. I should just play the pirated version.
Stating how her imaginary family sees her.
I'm pretty sure the pirated version has
the
way
mental state that
Shut
Claire
up.
is currently in. Now I gotta admit before I
so
even
bullshit.
move on, the only reason I really
I don't know how to
chose
fix this
make
either.
an analysis on this short is because it really
Whatever.
spoke to me. This
Hate this
entire
game.
analysis that you're watching is coming from someone who endured a lot of emotional neglect growing up, and it still affects me today. And to be even more meta with it, it might even attribute to why I'm a YouTuber. Constantly posting stuff online and posting my opinions everywhere, trying to get validation for what I believe in, because I never got that growing up. And that's honestly what I found really disturbing about this entire short, is just how incredibly relatable it can be. If you're someone that lives in a household similar to this, or has a parent that's similar to one of Claire's adult family members, then you'll be able to
Play
relate
Halo
to
Infinite.
a lot of what this short offers.
That's- I
Even
know.
tiny things like the mom not admitting fault. Earlier she says this line.
This gets so bad. I feel terrible for all the things. I feel terrible.
Notice that she stutters. She's about to admit fault, saying that she feels terrible for what she's done, but she stops herself. Because people that are like this, people that cause their own problems and cause their own emotional turmoil, never accept responsibility. Instead, they choose to blame other people for their problems, and what's even scarier is that it can come in all types of different shapes and forms. For example, you might have people like the dad, who genuinely on the surface, if you really listen to what he's saying, he's not a terrible person. He seems like a very innocent man that went through some kind of event in his life, whether it was his wife beating him, as it kind of alludes to that in the short. If you guys pause during this sequence, you actually see what his real face looks like, and you also get to see later in the video when the mom's musical number is going off, you kind of see her hit the dad with something, clearly implying that there's more going on behind the scenes. But these households exist. People walking into their house not knowing what's going to go down, making this big journey. This 12-minute short is some people's lives, sadly to say. Some kids will grow up in households where every adult in their life just uses them. And that's what the entire last sequence showcases. We see Claire is the pills of the mom. We see that Claire is literally the mirror that the dad looks in. And we see that Claire replaces the eyeballs of the grandpa. Every single adult in her house is using her for their own personal gain, leaving her with nothing left to give, feeling like she's not even her own person. And the only way for her to escape her reality is to literally walk across the street and stare at a photo of another family, wishing that she was them. And that is the disturbing effect of child neglect.
Okay.
Notorious hacking group Anonymous is one of the biggest online vigilante.
They do not forgive. They do not forget.
And government.
Reading citizens of the world.
Anonymous, by the way. God, these guys are so annoying. The notorious hacker group Anonymous.
Sitting on his couch in the suburbs, this man was suddenly gripped by the unusual situation he found himself in. His phone hadn't made any noises for a while. This never happened. Aaron Barr was one of those people who lived inside his phone even on the day of the biggest sporting event in the United States. He took out his phone and examined it. No new notifications. Much like when you're trying to look engrossed in your phone in a busy waiting room, he went to the email app and refreshed the page to see if it just wasn't showing up. That wasn't the case. Instead, he was greeted with the words, "Cannot get mail." Maybe the login session has expired, he thought, trying anything he could to distract himself from what he knew to be the truth. He went to the login page and carefully typed out his password, Kebafo33. It didn't work. Barr had one of those feelings you get that can't really be put into words, besides the vulgarity of your stomach dropping out of your asshole. The feeling that lets you know something extremely bad just happened and you're powerless to do anything about it. You see, earlier that day, Aaron Barr had been chatting to a hacker named Tokyo, who was part of the group known simply as Anonymous. This exchange was significant, but he thought he was in the clear. Only allowing himself to be gripped by the panic for a moment, he rushed upstairs to his home computer as quickly as he could. Perhaps he thought he could stem the bleeding or recover accounts before it was too late. He was wrong. He couldn't believe how wrong he was, in fact. Accounts that had nothing to do with anything were already compromised, along with ones that could end his whole career. Facebook, Twitter, Yahoo. At this stage, perhaps in a way to maintain some sanity or form of control, he even tried to log into his World of Warcraft account. That also didn't work. As anxiety and panic once again took control, the flashing lights caught his attention. It was the router. They were now using a distributed denial of service attack to take down his own network. I'm fucked, he thought. And he was right. After 2 semesters of college and the realization that school wasn't in his blood, Barr decided that the US Navy would be more his speed. Barr was a smart guy and became a SIGINT officer, signals intelligence for short.
He was a real Navy SEAL.
Analytics. With deployments across the planet, he racked up years of experience in his specialization. 4 years in Japan, 3 years in Spain, time in the Ukraine, Portugal, Italy, and many more European countries. Quite the career. He spent a good portion of his time on board warships, but even dipped his toes into ground missions, being shot at in Kosovo. 12 years of this was enough to sour his attitude towards war, and he retired to a quiet life as a defense contractor for a company called Northrop Grumman. He started a family and soon a new company with a security consultant by the name of Greg Hoagland. Hoagland, already running his own business called HB Gary Inc., proposed the creation of a sister company called HB Gary Federal that would specialize in selling services to the United States government under the control of Barr. A golden opportunity to apply Barr's extensive skills sharpened through years in the Navy and break through the glass ceiling of being an employee. Instead, being the boss, giving him more time to spend with a wife and kids. This optimism didn't last for long. Despite sleepless nights trying to think of ways to secure contracts for HB Gary Federal, the business wasn't bringing in any money. He was desperate by this point. Over a year since he took the plunge, and he could hardly pay himself and the 2 employees he had, let alone continue to expand the business. The only reason he hadn't been forced to close the company was a single contract. He was providing, quote, social media training for executives, which sounds like a guide on how to use Facebook or stay safe on Twitter, but was in fact how to use social networking sites to gather information and spy on people. Despite the circumstances being grim, Barr was not a man to give up easily. In October 2010, he began conversations with a law firm by the name of Hunton and Williams. They needed help, quote, dealing with their opponents. An example being a recent WikiLeaks link that heavily suggested they were withholding a trove of confidential data from one of their clients, a little company known as the Bank of America. This was the perfect opportunity for Barr to jump into action with a PowerPoint presentation all about how he could start a disinformation campaign against WikiLeaks, any journalists that supported them or discussed the leaks, as well as perform cyber attacks on the website itself. Applying the tools of his trade further, he showed the law firm how they could gather information on the personal lives of the staff by friending them on Facebook. Despite this effort, January 2011 rolled around, and they were still without any contracts. it was time to do something crazy, and he had the perfect venue for it. A conference by the name of B-Sides, which was specifically for security professionals and being hosted in San Francisco. Barr knew that he needed a topic that would showcase his skills while being intriguing enough to ignite the interest of his peers. It just so happened that around this time, the hacker group known as Anonymous were a mainstay of mainstream media headlines. As WikiLeaks was starting to become impossible to ignore due to what they were publishing, major corporate entities were making moves to try and choke the website out of existence. Under pressure from the US government, PayPal froze the donation accounts of WikiLeaks. Visa, MasterCard, and Western Union stopped accepting payments for the website, and according to founder Julian Assange, cost them 95% of their revenue. This sparked a sort of internet war, with multiple groups of hackers targeting the websites and services of companies like MasterCard and Visa as retaliation for what they were doing to WikiLeaks. A fascinating story in and of itself, with a rabbit hole that goes deep enough for a separate video altogether. People across the globe were watching this situation, intrigued by the mysterious group known as Anonymous, and Barr was no exception. He recognized this as an opportunity, the golden opportunity. While arrests had been made in connection to these cyber attacks, convictions were almost unheard of, and leadership was still out there. That is, if there even was leadership. No one even knew who they were looking for yet, or what the organizational structure was. Barr, however, thought he could find them. He thought he could do a better job than the FBI, using the skills taught to him in the Navy, and in the process propel his company to the front of all queues for the lucrative defense contracts he was looking for. He understood the risks in chasing down a group of unknown size and power, or at least he thought he did. I mean, what's the worst they can do to him, right? Most likely just take down his website, deface it with their usual shock value messaging, including racism and many words that would get this video deleted from the internet as of 2022. And so he began his investigation, applying his tradecraft to try and infiltrate Anonymous. He started out lurking in online chat rooms where supporters of the group would congregate. He went by the name of AnonCog, which later became Cog Anon. He pretended to be a new Anon, ready to do whatever he could to assist the cause, all the while meticulously keeping track of the other users.
I don't know how he saw me, but he saw me.
There were hundreds of users active in the chat each day, though he was paying the closest
attention
to the people who were most active. He used
what a
fake
fucking
Facebook accounts
idiot.
to friend anyone who
Dude, what
openly
the
supported
fuck?
Anonymous, of which there
They
were
just
many,
stood there like
and tried
fucking
to time when
morons.
frequent users would leave the chat with
These guys
any
are
of
just
those
ball
accounts
grabbers,
immediately
whatever.
becoming active on Facebook. The assumption being a user would leave chat, then log on Facebook, and he could try to match real-life identities to their chat room counterparts. Not the most sophisticated method, and definitely full of holes. By the end of 2011, however, he'd made a 20-page document of names, descriptions, and contact information for suspected supporters and even some leaders of the group Anonymous. On January 22nd, 2011, he sent out an email to business partner Hoagland, as well as co-president Penny Levy, and his own second-in-command at HB Gary Federal, Ted Vera, informing them of his impending talk at B-Sides, along with the goal. The main benefit of this would be the press attention. In what he thought was a 300 IQ move, he also leaked the information of the impending talk to a few people within Anonymous, telling them that a so-called cybersecurity expert would be giving a talk about Anonymous at the conference. He even told them the name of this expert, Aaron Barr, his own name. This was both incredibly smart and incredibly stupid at the same time.
Because he revealed himself.
The Hail Mary play. He wanted all eyeballs on him, and he was poking a very dangerous bee's nest under the assumption he was smart enough to avoid getting stung and get away with all the honey. Along with this, he reached out to journalists prior to the event to drum up even more interest, seizing on the fact that people were very curious about the name Anonymous and directing them to his impending talk. One such journalist was Joseph Len, a reporter from San Francisco
I can barely
area
shoot
who
these
worked for the
guys.
Financial Times. Barr discussed the basic outline of the more
still
extensive
somehow
talk
getting
with
shit ton of
Joseph
kills.
about the hundreds of participants in these cyber attacks, the structure of the organization with 10 names sitting at the very top. He suggested that Anonymous was much more organized than people thought and had a typical hierarchy with decisions coming down from this leadership. The story was printed on Friday, February 4th with the headline, "Cyber activists warned of arrest," with quotes from Barr within. This was fantastic news, and within 24 hours, the FBI was reaching out to Barr asking him if he would share his information with them. The plan had worked. It was flawless. The meeting was set. Monday, the day after the Super Bowl, Barr would go to meet with the FBI and turn in all he knew about Anonymous. But the FBI wasn't the only organization that had taken an interest in Barr's story. A new chat room had been set up, and invites were sent out by a user known as T-Flow. Sabu, Topiary, Kayla, and T-Flow started to talk to each other, and the topic was Aaron Barr. They discussed the article printed in the Financial Times how Barr had claimed to know the hierarchy of Anonymous, which was conceptually wrong as there was no hierarchy, meaning most of his other research was likely also wrong, but could still be dangerous to them. Even if the idea was wrong, the names could be right. The group very quickly got to work collecting information on Barr and his business, HB Gary Federal, including
I can
the
barely
website.
shoot him.
Now, to highlight some irony
See, yeah,
here,
see,
HB Gary Federal
dude, everything's a
almost entirely to
fucking
assist
miss.
other companies in their cybersecurity, but their own website ran on
Even
a
this guy got
third-party
confused.
publishing system that left it open to an SQL injection. Essentially, databases store information, and structured query language, or SQL for short, was a popular way to retrieve and manipulate information within said databases. An SQL injection works by injecting commands into the server to retrieve information that should be hidden from the user. Using this method, Sabu and Kayla managed to get usernames and passwords for all employees of HB Gary, including Hoagland and their target Barr. The passwords were luckily encrypted using a standard technique called MD5, and if these passwords were well made, long and complex,
I want to murder these guys.
And this wasn't the area of expertise for
Because they're
this
pissing off the
particular group.
wrong
They
guy.
instead took the 3 hashes representing passwords for Aaron Barr, Ted Vera, and another executive named Phil Wallish, and uploaded them to a web forum called hashkiller.com, which specialized in cracking passwords exactly like this. Within a couple of hours, all 3 hashes were cracked, one of them which looked like this. And there it was. At the end of a long string of numbers and letters was Aaron Barr's password, Kibafo33. They tried to access HB Gary Federal email account hosted on Google Apps, and it worked. Within 24 hours of learning about Aaron Barr's existence, this group of 4 anonymous hackers were inside his company email, watching him exchange messages with colleagues about how well the article had done and how happy he was about
I
the
gotta fuck this
situation.
guy, honestly.
Not content with this level of access, they took to the internet to try his username, email, and passwords on other websites. It's funny, really, that a security expert who spent years working for the Navy and now sold his expertise to corporations and potentially even the government had failed the first rule of operational security that you would tell your grandmother: never use the same password across multiple accounts. The password, Kibafo33, worked not just on his business emails, but his Twitter, his Yahoo, Flickr, Facebook, and World of Warcraft accounts. At this point, the group could do pretty much anything they wanted at any time. Instead, they decided to be patient. They would use this weekend to spy on Barr and download every shred of information they could from all of his accounts. In this investigation into the investigator, they discovered his plans to meet the FBI in 60 hours on Monday. This information sent the chat room into a mild panic. That is, until they found his presentation PDF, which didn't list the names of anyone within this 4-man group. They, however, saw his method of correlating anonymous hackers to Facebook accounts,
don't fuck with me.
decided
I'll kill all of you. I'll
no
John
idea
Wick all you
what he was
motherfuckers.
doing. While some of the group went through all of this, T-Flow was compiling all of Barr's emails into a torrent, which he planned to release on the popular torrent website, the Pirate Bay. At the very same time, totally oblivious to what was going on, and with about 30 hours until the Super Bowl kicked off, Barr was running security checks on his website, hbgaryfederal.com, which was seeing more traffic than usual, though none of which was organic. Barr had told Anonymous about his story and investigation. He'd expected they would perform distributed denial of service attacks on the website in retaliation, and if I had to guess, I'd say he was pretty smug about the fact that this was the sum of their wrath. Though it was only a mild inconvenience, he did still try to nip this in the bud and logged into one of his many fake Facebook profiles called Julian Goodspeak and spoke to one of his anonymous contacts called Commander X, who he believed was a senior member of anonymous hierarchy. Barr thought he had the name of this individual, which he'd noted down in the investigation PDF as Benjamin Spock de Vries. This, as with most if not all of the investigation, was completely wrong. He asked Commander X if he could perhaps do something about the DDoS, but unfortunately, he had no idea it was even happening.
God damn,
Not
bro.
my doing, he replied. This, in context, should have let
Okay, we
Barr
lost this
know
one.
that his assumption about Anonymous having a traditional hierarchy was incorrect, and the organization instead was many smaller groups working under the umbrella of the same name. Commander X also, in this conversation, let Barr know that he'd taken a look at the HB Gary Federal website and that it looked vulnerable to attack. Quote, "I hope you're being paid well," he said. Despite receiving this warning, Barr did
Yeah, they won.
absolutely nothing with that information. It was now Sunday, game day, 11 hours until kickoff. T-Flow had finished collecting all of the
God, this
emails
is
from
so
not only Barr's
good.
account, but also Vera and
I'm
Wallace as well.
I'm
The torrent
pissed
was
off
ready to go.
because
the group knew it was too late for Barr to
these
do
guys are
anything,
losers,
and so
dude.
decided
They
it was
suck
time
so
to toy
much.
with him a little bit. During
I
that
could have
time,
killed
the
them
emails
all.
They knew about his super secret username in the Anon chats, and Topiary made contact Hello. Karganon replied, Hi. The group were gathered around in a private chat coaching him on what to say. Tell him you're recruiting for a new mission. Be careful. He may get suspicious quickly, they said. We're recruiting for a new operation in the Washington area. Interested? Potentially. Depends on what it is, Bar replied. Topiary was pasting responses into the private chat as they came. Look at that F-gamer word, trying to psyops me out of info, he said to the others. I take it from your host that you are near where our target is, he said to Bar. Is it physical or virtual? Ah, yeah, I am close, replied Bar. Virtual, everything is placed, said Topiary. At this point, T-Flow made another chat room within the anonymous chat network called OPHB Gary, standing for Operation HB Gary, and started to invite people to join. Another hacker by the name AV Unit joined and asked, guys, is this really happening? Because this shit is awesome. Meanwhile, in the private conversation between Topiary and Bar, the group were twisting the screws. Our target is a security company. Panic immediately hit Bar. Washington area where he lived. Security company. This was about HB Gary. This was about him. This was about his company. He hastily wrote out an email and sent it to other HB Gary managers to warn them. Quote, now we are being directly threatened. I will bring this up with the FBI when I meet them tomorrow, the email read. Little did he know, this group who was speaking to him right now was watching the email being sent. Okay, well, just let me know. Not sure how I can still help though, Bar replied to Topiary after he sent this email to the managers. That depends. What skills do you have? We need help gathering info on Liggett.com security company, replied Topiary. Relief washed over Bar. He now thought he was safe. Liggett was in the same line of work, in the same area. He wasn't a target. HB Gary was safe. Ah, okay, let me check them out. It's been a while since I've looked at them. Anything specific? Bar said to Topiary, but he didn't reply.
Fuck am I shooting, dude?
Realized they were local to DC. Man, I'm racking my brain and I can't remember why they were so popular a while ago. I remember there being a lot of aggression towards them. Still no reply. You still there? At this point, Topiary was busy planning with the team. He replied about 45 minutes later, sorry about that, stay tuned. Okay, Bar replied. The relief Bar felt was short-lived. Shortly after this exchange is when Bar checked his phone and discovered things had gone badly. It can't be overstated just how badly. For any average person being hacked, that's a nightmare. The idea of strangers going through your personal correspondence or having access to intimate information regarding your life, it's awful. For Bar, however, he was a cybersecurity expert. His job was based on the perception he knew how to prevent this from happening and could charge you large sums of money to make sure you remain safe, to make sure your company remains safe. What does it say about your business when the leader fails so utterly in exactly what he's selling? His pride or ego wouldn't help him though. The next step was to contact his partners, Greg and Penny, to tell them what was happening. Then to contact his IT admins who recommended contacting Google to try and regain control of the website. None of this, however, would recover the emails, and that was the big problem. At this point, Topiary and the rest of the group began their plan for real, as this was just phase 1. First, they logged into Bar's Twitter and started to post the way Anonymous typically would. Okay, my fellow Anonymous F-gamer word, we're working on bringing you the finest laws as we speak. Stay tuned. Another tweet reads, sup motherfuckers, I'm CEO of a shitty company and I'm a giant media whoring C-word. Check out my N-word Greg site, rootkit.com. Followed by tweets containing all of Bar's personal information. I'm talking his social security number, his phone number, his address, literally everything. Now for context, rootkit.com was Hoagland's website dedicated to programming tools that could invisibly gain access to a computer system. You see, after initial access was gained to Bar's server, and while the rest of the group were compiling Bar's information and trolling him over the weekend, Sabu and Kayla had been attempting to gain administrator access on the rootkit.com server. In part, they were able to accomplish this due to Bar having been an administrator of the company email system, which let his account reset the passwords of other inboxes, including Hoagland's. While inside of Hoagland's email accounts, they sent emails to one of HB Gary's admins, a Finnish security specialist, attempting to ironically gain root access to rootkit.com. I'm in Europe and need to SSH into the server, said Sabu, pretending to be Hoagland. SSH stands for Secure Shell, a way of logging into a server from a remote location. Are you on a public computer? Replied the admin. No, I don't have the public IP with me at the moment because I'm ready for a small meeting and I'm in a rush. If anything, just reset my password to change me123 and give me public IP and I'll SSH and reset my password, said Sabu. Okay, your password is change me123 smiley face. In Europe, but not in Finland, question mark, replied the admin. If I can squeeze out the time, maybe we can catch up. I'll be in Germany for a little bit.
Jesus
Thanks,
Christ.
finished Sabu. Though the password didn't work, he continued to email him, pretending to be Hoagland, and somehow not remembering his username, asking if it was Greg, but being reminded it was Hoagland by said admin. Social engineering success. Though looking at this from an outsider perspective, it seems incredibly obvious that this situation was one big red flag. I mean, how do you not remember your own username being your actual name? It mattered not though, they were in at every level. As soon as they had this access, they deleted everyone else's usernames and passwords, changed the page to a simple HTML reading, Greg Hoagland equals owned. After that, they did the same to hbgaryfederal.com, removing the homepage and replacing it with the anonymous logo.
They suck so much, bro. I took out the entire team. They still struggle against one person.
There was a link that said, quote, download HB Gary emails, directing anyone who clicked to the torrent T-Flow had created. In addition, there was a message written by Topiary that read as follows. This domain has been seized by Anonymous under section 14 of the rules of the internet. Greetings, HB Gary, a computer security company. Your recent claims of infiltrating Anonymous amuse us, and so do your attempts at using Anonymous as a means to garner press attention for yourself. How's this for attention? You've tried to bite at the Anonymous hand, and now the Anonymous hand is bitch slapping you in the face. That was it. The hack was over, everything that could have been done had been, and Bar's life was ruined. He tried to use Anonymous as a vehicle to save his business, to elevate his reputation above his peers, and to enrich himself. In part, it worked better than he could ever have expected. He got more press attention than he could ever have dreamed of, but no one would ever be able to trust his security expertise ever again. Now, to go into a couple more details, at the point of when he knew he'd been hacked, but before the entire meltdown, before everything had been published, with nothing left to lose, Bar logged onto the Anonymous chat room to confront Sabu, T-Flow, Topiary, and Kegler. He was invited to a room called Operation HB Gary, and he took notes of the usernames. Some he recognized from his grand investigation, and others that were completely new. As he entered, immediately the taunts began. Now they're threatening us directly, am I right? Said Topiary, clearly referencing the email Bar hastily sent to warn HB Gary management, when originally he trolled him into believing he was the target of the operation, which of course it turned out he was. Enjoying the Super Bowl, I hope, said Q, a new member of the group whom joined just to witness.
Yeah, damn, they get that one quickly.
Well, Mr. Bar, I apologize for what's about to happen to you and your company, said T-Flow, the one who had orchestrated the entire operation in the first place. I figured something like this would happen, said Bar. Nah, you won't like what's coming next, replied Topiary. Dude, you just don't get it. It was research on social media vulnerabilities.
What the fuck, dude? How?
I was never gonna release the names, pleaded
Dude,
Bar.
it's fucking
Lie.
lag.
Don't you have a meeting with the FBI Monday morning, said Sabu. Sabu, he totally does, replied Topiary. At this point, Bar knew that lying was useless. They knew everything. Okay, yep. They called me, he said. Oh guys, what's coming next is the delicious cake, replied Topiary. I have Bar's, Ted's, and Phil's emails. All 68,000, said T-Flow. Those emails are going to be pretty, replied Hoosh, another member that joined to witness the lulls. Lol, okay guys, well you got me, right? Smiley face, said Bar, clearly defeated at this point. Well, Aaron, thank you for taking part in this little mini social test to see if you'd run to your company with news about Anon. You did. We leached it. We laughed. Die in a fire. You are done, said Topiary, bringing their interaction with Bar to an abrupt end. After this, Bar called in Penny Levy to try and speak to the Anonymous group and reason with them to stop the madness. At first, they were even polite, though it soon devolved.
Doesn't matter that my team
ended.
is garbage.
Please do not release the HB Gary emails.
We're still
There is
ruining
private
somehow.
information there of clients, she said. Shouldn't be sending emails you don't want your mother reading, said Hey Guys, another new face. Dozens of innocent people could have gone to jail, replied Sabu, referring to
What the
Bar's
fuck,
investigation.
dude? How?
which seemed to
Oh, yeah,
randomly
time expired.
link people
Damn.
to anonymous cyber
Garbage.
attacks, despite there being little to no evidence. And so the emails were released. The hack concluded, communication broke down as there was nothing more to be said. The initial hack was retaliation for Bar's claims of being capable of exposing Anonymous, which was a danger to people who operated under that umbrella. It wasn't until the hack was a success that this particular group of Anon found evidence of extremely dirty tricks and intricate plans of devious intent, such as smear campaigns against trade unions and cyber attacks
Okay, we're back. Yeah, feeling better maybe.
Against websites like
Watch this for a
WikiLeaks.
bit.
Some people saw this information and retroactively applied that this vigilante justice would be justified, and the group became legendary amongst anonymous circles. In a secret chat, the group celebrated, though I'm sure in the back of their mind they knew that this escapade had painted a target on their back. That thought didn't stop them from making plans though. If they could bring down a cybersecurity company this easily, the sky was the limit, and so they banded together against new targets. No one was safe. A media institution, an entertainment Goliath, not even the FBI itself, all in the name of Anonymous, and all for the lulz. On April 20th, 2011, a mysterious force took down Sony PlayStation Network and Curiosity after months of a brutal fight between the conglomerate and its customers. Millions of subscribers worldwide lived with the threat of identity theft for almost a month while the culprits remained at large. And lurking in the background of it all was the network known as Anonymous, and one of the most prolific hackers of the modern age, a man called GeoHot. When the dust settled, over $171 million would be lost, and a slew of new regulations would forever change online commerce. This is the story of the PlayStation Network hack.
I'd say my cause is to, if companies want to put these security measures on these devices, great, good for them. But if we want to come in and we want to remove these security measures so we can do legal things with our devices, then I think we have every right to it. I guess that's my cause.
To understand the events, let's look at a young hacker who put a face to a movement, George Hotz, known online of course as GeoHot. At the end of June 2007, Apple made history with their new product, the iPhone, the mobile device that revolutionized communication and cell phones. I mean, think about pre-iPhone. We carried around some real goofy looking products before this came along. There was one small problem. If you were located in the United States and wanted to take part of the digital bliss of Apple's flagship product, you had to use AT&T as your service provider. This didn't sit right with 17-year-old George Hotz. He wanted the phone, of course, everybody did, but he didn't want to give up his affordable T-Mobile plan. So, what could this kid do about it? First off, Hotz wasn't any ordinary teen. At this point in his early life, he was already an accomplished engineer and tech guru that had been featured on shows like Today with Katie Couric, and despite his young years, he was running circles around his seniors. With such a keen mind for tech and a rebellious streak to go with it, George made a decision. Instead of being forced to switch networks, the New Jersey native took a precision screwdriver and guitar pick to pop open the back of his iPhone and got to work. For him, it was simple. He just had to override the commands to the baseband processor by soldering a chip to the wire and scrambling its code. Then he created a program on his PC to allow the iPhone to use any carrier and installed the software. In less than 3 months, Hotz reverse engineered the device it took years to build. He became the first person to jailbreak an iPhone. And despite his high level of intelligence, he then did what any other teenager would do: published the victory on YouTube. The tech world went wild, while Steve Jobs, for once, had very little to say. Steve Wozniak, Apple co-founder and actual genius depending on who you ask, praised Hotz, calling him a creative instead of a criminal. For the next few years, GeoHot became the darling of the hacker community, putting out videos on jailbreaking iPhones without any challenge from the industry leader. Some thought he was doing the tech giants a favour, since more people might buy the phone without switching networks, and perhaps this was true. This gave our young prodigy a history of ripping things open and making them work the way he wanted, which often wasn't the way the creator intended. Even before the iPhone, he was doing this just in his life out of curiosity. In an interview with his father, he said that the kid would constantly rip open remote controls and appliances to just learn how they worked. As a student, he hacked his school computers to play Beethoven's Ninth. It seemed by all accounts, Hotz had, from an early age, one of the most valuable assets a human can possess: an insatiable curiosity. And now, he had the whole internet encouraging him to go to the next level. The donations from his iPhone jailbreak program gave him enough money to fund a cross-country trek from the East Coast to the Google headquarters in California. The young Hotz dropped out of college to follow the path of every tech leader to stake out his claim in the Wild West known as Silicon Valley. But it didn't take long for boredom to set in. While Google might have been quirky compared to other jobs, it was still a rigid corporate structure, one that didn't excite someone with George's abilities. He was now done with the internet fame and attention from jailbreaking, now done with Google too, and he moved back home to Jersey, announcing his retirement from hacking phones. It was the end of an era, but really, just like the iPhone, Hotz was about to upgrade. As he got home, he received a package containing a simple challenge: hack the PS3. To this point, he'd been successful and comfortable living off his exploits for the past few years, but that was the problem. He was comfortable, and clearly, nothing bothered George quite like living in safety. He made a career out of risk, and this challenge lit the fire back in his soul. So in 2010, the hacker announced his glorious return with his new goal to hack the PS3. At this stage in 2010, 7th generation video game consoles were considered appliances. The big three, Nintendo Wii, Microsoft Xbox 360 and Sony PlayStation 3, were brand names as big as Coke and Pepsi. You were almost expected to have one of the big three available in your home. But for the hardcore gaming crowd, having a piece of equipment as is wouldn't cut it. The tech inside the consoles was much more sophisticated than ever before, but the secrets within belonged to manufacturers. The machines were impressive, but they were artificially limited. Enter the home brewer, part hacker, part programmer. These people blurred the lines between PC and console gamers. They hacked the hardware to access hidden features and run pirated copies of games, or backups as they were called. They could also mod games, create background themes, and make consoles another computer essentially. But until now, the PS3 remained untouched, even in this elite community. So with the gauntlet thrown down, Hotz returned to the tools that made him infamous: his screwdriver and soldering iron. He laboured into the late night for over 5 weeks, creating a string of code 500 lines long on his PC. If this code worked, then his screen would flash 0. If it didn't, it would display 5. This was the moment. Was it all bluster, or was Hotz the real thing? He began the sequence and held his breath. The screen flashed, he waited. Seconds stretched unnaturally, and then he got his answer. The screen flashed again with the single number, 0. He had done the impossible, again. And just like before, he went online to flaunt the accomplishment. No video this time, just a single line of text: I have hacked the PS3. He called his massive code Finnegan's Wake and distributed the instructions online for others to replicate his success. Hotz exploited a program running on the PS3 called Other OS. It allowed the system to run Linux, the preferred operating system of homebrewers and computer nerds everywhere. When Hotz successfully hacked the hardware, he turned it from a single-purpose video game console into a desktop computer, allowing others like him to write their own programs. But unlike Apple, Sony didn't stay silent. They didn't praise him. They would not let some kid from New Jersey get the better of them. They issued a corrective patch to stop other hackers from exploiting the system's weakness. People were used to playing Sony games, but now Sony had created a new game, a game of cat and mouse. The homebrew community responded, and they were not happy. This patch ended their free reign over the PS3, a move that they called absolute madness. And GeoHot, at the centre of it all, became a divisive figure. This was a world he'd helped create, and so some heralded him as the messiah of that world. Others went the opposite route and wanted him stopped at all costs. This resulted in his personal information being posted online, known otherwise as doxing. Phone number, real name, address. He was now a much more public figure, whether he liked it or not. Regardless, one thing was for sure: Sony's patch wouldn't stop him from getting back into the system. After all, in his words, his whole life is a hack. But how would he do it this time? Hotz always thought of hacking as a tool of persuasion. If he could find a way to manipulate the system, he could convince it to do whatever he wanted. Last time he used that logic to create code that forced his way in. Now he had a different tactic. Why force control when he could convince the PS3 to give him control instead? In January 2011, Hotz used his decryption program on a different part of the console to reveal the access key to override the patch. It took him weeks to jailbreak the PS3 on the first try. The second time around, the PS3 submitted to his will in under 10 minutes. But this time, he paused for consideration. He knew The moment his patch released, Sony would again fix the vulnerability. Something needed to change, and so before he gave the code away again, he placed a special feature to stop the console from playing pirated games.
Well, they can't use my stuff with pirated video games. I made a special effort when I released my stuff to not support pirated video games. But
What a
more
loser.
pressing than that is
Why else
just
would people hack your
the
consoles?
immensity of the press and, attention Sony has brought to this issue that has never affected more than a very small segment of their customers.
This, he thought, probably correctly, was Sony's biggest issue. Of course, others could have deactivated his feature if they knew how, but after Sony's wrath came down last time, he wanted to show a little good faith to the conglomerate. He then released his version of the hack to the world again, and it was very popular. Now, of course, while others claimed to jailbreak the PS3 before HOTS, he was undoubtedly the one to brag most brazenly as he did. The others were ghosts. He, HOTS, had a blog. He reveled in the attention. Despite his goodwill, Sony were done now. They knew they could patch again, and he would continue to break it. The cat and mouse game was over. Instead, they set their legal team to follow the breadcrumb trail of cheese, leading them directly to HOTS and his loyal supporters. This of course wasn't hard. HOTS was loud, and on January 11, 2011, Sony sued HOTS and some of his cohorts for violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and of course facilitating copyright infringement. Now the battle lines were being drawn. George HOTS might have been listed as a defendant, but the message was very clear. It was bigger than him. Sony were now saying, in no uncertain terms, if you buy a PS3, you buy it and use it as is, or we will come for you. Hacktivists call this a violation of First Amendment rights. After all, who's to say how you use anything after you buy it? Del Monte doesn't bust down your door after you slice up one of their pineapples and put it on a pizza. So why was Sony different?
That is true.
What gave them the right to say how you can use a product that you purchased? But they claimed, of course, it was a copyright issue. HOTS' attempt to stop pirated games from playing on the system did not impress or stop them. Sony claimed that as long as the system could be hacked, it opened the door to piracy, and that was enough. They stated that ripped games cost the industry around $8 billion annually, and the legal team argued that they weren't just protecting their intellectual property, but also protecting consumers as well. HOTS did not see it this way. He made his case publicly, appearing on G4, which, if you're too young to remember, was like CNN for gaming.
So then what do you think the issue is? What exactly are you being sued for here?
Making Sony mad.
Ah, oh, that'll do it.
He joked around with the hosts about the situation. He even put out a 1-minute diss track on his YouTube channel.
Yo, it's Geo High.
I can't properly kill these guys, especially when they're all teamed up against me.
He made fun of Sony and called himself the personification of freedom for all, challenging them to use this video as evidence at the trial. GeoHot of course wasn't taking the situation seriously. Yet. It was clear now that neither side was going to back down. But Sony was publicly mostly quiet. They weren't looking to win the meme wars. Despite what the internet thinks, the court of public opinion is irrelevant when the law is involved. Their plan was of course to dominate the courts. And they were. It started with a successful restraining order placed on HOTS. He could no longer by law hack the PS3 and publish his exploits and findings online. But Sony smelled blood in the water, so why stop there? They subpoenaed Twitter, Google, YouTube, and HOTS' internet provider, as well as the IP addresses of anyone who downloaded the hack instructions. They were even granted access to HOTS' PayPal records, finding anyone who donated money to him.
I literally cannot fucking
Essentially,
kill.
anyone who gave HOTS money,
this
attention,
latency is
likes,
so
views, or
garbage.
downloaded his products
Look at that, look
were
at how
just
it
as
moves.
guilty as him in Sony's eyes. This overreach stunned the world. It was undoubtedly going to set a terrifying precedent, but according to the courts, it was valid. Each decision was upheld legally. There was one group on the internet, however, who said enough is enough. They saw these actions for what they were, acts of war. HOTS was no longer alone in this fight. Now, a new challenger entered the arena.
Oh my god, cringe.
The mysterious group Anonymous has struck again with a warning. This is just the beginning.
Anonymous is one of the biggest online vigilante groups. Members hack into companies
Anonymous is the
and
biggest
governments.
little cringe to exist.
This is a message from Anonymous.
Anonymous, the most notorious and secretive hacker collective on Earth, and in their words,
Anonymous is full
they
of
are
child
legion.
groomers.
Angered by Sony's actions against their consumers and the abuse of power, the group issued an ominous and disturbing threat. Congratulations, Sony, you've now received the undivided attention of Anonymous. You saw a hornet's nest, and you stuck your penises in it. You must face the consequences of your actions, Anonymous style. As cringe as that statement comes off, Anonymous started to follow through. On April 4th, the hacker collective took down Sony.com and PlayStation.com just hours after their bizarre press release. The group took responsibility in a subsequent YouTube video and issued their demands.
Anonymous is currently targeting Sony's website. We are doing this because Sony is currently suing people for making features the PlayStation originally had available to the public.
Leave GeoHot and the other hackers alone. Let them continue to hack the PS3 freely, or there would be more to come. At this point, despite the swagger GeoHot displayed a few months prior, this wasn't the kind of help he wanted. He feared that Anonymous and their army could anger Sony even more, maybe even implicating him in their attacks. And he was of course right to be afraid. While you could argue about how he made a living, everything Hotz did was in the light of day. His methods were an open book for anyone to see online. But Anonymous is literally called Anonymous. They're secretive, militant, and decentralized. Without a clear leader or structure, they were free to attack Sony at will using whatever tools they had available. Literally anybody could claim to be anonymous and do anything, co-opting the messaging and the group to essentially do whatever they wanted. Some, of course, would go further than others, without consideration of the repercussions on anyone else associated. One such faction of the shadowy group doxed Sony executives, posting the addresses and names of their family members. Some of Anonymous even wanted to take the fight to the judge in the case, where of course most of them just wanted to do something juvenile like shit in a bag and leave it at the CEO of Sony's doorstep. Honestly, it was of course chaos without any clear direction. Hotz at this stage rushed to avoid stepping in more shit, reaching a settlement agreement with Sony on April 11th. The young hacker agreed never to homebrew another PS3 or any of their other products ever again. Even though Hotz agreed to this injunction, bowing out of the situation, his supporters did not back down. It might have begun with Hotz, but it was now going to end with Anonymous, and they were ready to go even further. On April 13th, Anonymous released another video calling for a day of Sony protest.
This is an update on the current Operation Sony. GeoHot has taken a settlement with Sony. The case has been dropped. In the eyes of the law, the case is closed. For Anonymous, it is just beginning. It is April 16th. Grab your mask, a few friends, and get to a local Sony store by you. Use the IRC and the official Facebook page to organize a protest in your area.
That weekend, many Sony stores in the United Kingdom decided to close to play it safe. The Manchester location even had police waiting out front, just in case things got out of hand. In California, one protester plastered flyers until they were asked to leave by mall security, but that's kind of it. As with most consumer-based protests, it came and went without much fuss. Clearly, if Anonymous wanted to hurt Sony, it couldn't be in the real world. That is not where Anonymous conducted their best work. So instead, they returned to the shadows, and on April 17th, employees at Sony noticed something abnormal about their servers. The machines kept rebooting without authorization. This activity continued for the next 2 days, and while teams within the company worked frantically to investigate the root cause of the problems, they had no clue what was going on. It wasn't until April 19th that Sony realized somebody was hacking their servers. The problem here went beyond gaming. It wasn't just that the service was down for paying customers. This was an unfathomable escalation. Whoever was inside their system now had access to 77 million PSN subscriber accounts, their passwords, personal information, and potentially even their credit card data. With a breach like this in full effect for almost 3 days, Sony had to take drastic action to prevent further damage. On April 20th, Sony took down the PlayStation Network, leaving millions without paid service. They didn't tell the public what was happening, instead leaving a brief message on their blog. Quote, We are aware certain functions of PlayStation Network are down. We will report back here as soon as we can with more information. Thank you for your patience." As you can imagine, this didn't help anybody. Rumours were swirling online immediately. Was Anonymous really making good on their threats? The next day, the servers were still down, and once again, Sony begged for patience from their customers, saying it could be around 48 hours to fix the mess. On April 22nd, Sony finally admitted to, quote, an external intrusion, but they failed to mention the possibility of the data breach. I'm sure, of course, it just skipped their mind. While the internet buzzed and gamers fumed, Sony employees worked long hours to rebuild their network infrastructure. They even hired 2 outside cybersecurity firms to analyze and assist with the situation. Surprisingly, despite all their rants and threats, Anonymous denied hacking the PSN. They said a few rogue members could have caused it, but suggested the problem ultimately was likely the servers themselves. This, of course, is why Anonymous as a concept is so dangerous. There was no structure. It was not a body operating as one. The left hand didn't know what the right was doing, or more accurately, it didn't even know the right hand even existed. Sony eventually found a file on one of their servers with the name Anonymous. It contained the signature catchphrase, "We are Legion," a calling card confirming what everyone originally assumed. Anonymous, whether they knew it or not, was behind the attack. This was the perfect storm of incompetence, irresponsibility, and lies. 4 days later, Sony finally advised their customers that their credit card data could be at risk, although there was no evidence of theft. But no matter how they tried to play it down, the news had a devastating effect. Sony shares dropped in value day after day, investors were losing confidence in the tech giant. And then came the irony. Where Sony had previously brought legal action against the young man for his actions, the shoe was now on the other foot. A class action lawsuit had been filed against Sony, seeking compensation and free credit card monitoring services due to Sony's failure to act and protect their customers' data. At this stage, HOTS of course made sure to cover his bases, uploading a video calling the hack uncalled for, even if it's aimed at the bad guys. He wasn't taking any chances with being implicated this time. Cut to May 2nd, the network still remained closed. According to a Sony press release, thousands of credit card numbers could have been accessed. No matter how hard they tried, no amount of spin could stop the company from spiraling. It wasn't until May 14th that the service finally came back online, at least for some people, as it took them nearly 2 days for engineers to restore the PSN country by country. After 23 days, the nightmare finally came to an end. Well, for the customers anyway. For Sony, they were about to meet the final boss in this fight. Worse than any shadow hacker group or angry homebrewer, worse even than the angry investors and consumers. Now Sony faced the wrath of the United States Congress. A subcommittee of the US House launched an investigation into the cybercrimes occurring at Sony, concerned mainly with their lack of action leading up to the attacks. After all, they'd literally been threatened, they knew this could have happened, why were they not prepared for when it did? After verifying what information was at risk, Sony claimed they acted when they could and notified customers once they had all the facts. When asked about the credit card data, they claimed those numbers remained encrypted, but that wasn't the case for literally everything else, and that included passwords. So while credit card data was safe, according to Sony, hackers now had access to details that could see hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of accounts hacked as a result, putting even more data at risk if people were to have used those passwords across multiple services. Across the pond, the British Information Commissioner Office also had a formal investigation into Sony. They found that the company breached the UK's Data Protection Act of 1998, saying that technology was their stock and trade, and as such, the fact they didn't see it coming or stop it from happening was inexcusable. The UK fined them a measly $395,000.
Measly.
Sony, of course, had a long way to make it up to their customers, whose goodwill had all been burned. They pledged to provide insurance up to $1 million for anyone who was the victim of credit card fraud or identity theft. Since customers lost about 1 month of service, they gave out 30 days free for PSN Plus subscribers. They even let gamers choose 2 free games to download from a very limited selection. But forget Sony for a moment, because no amount of gifts could undo the damage they'd done to an entire industry. It was the most significant data breach of its time and undermined confidence in online security. More revealing, the events leading up to the hack showed Sony's priorities were games and proprietary rights, and not consumers. The breach showed the weakness of a megacorporation's servers, their hubris regarding the
Over the last year, speedrunner Jadiwi would set 10 records across 4 different games in the Pokemon series, a feat very uncommon today as the Pokemon games have been speedrun and optimized for over a decade. But it turns out that Jadiwi only accomplished this because he was cheating. Perhaps worst of all, he almost managed to steal $8,500 worth of bounties with his cheated records. So let's start by looking at the run that first raised suspicion and led to Jadiwi's world of fake records to come crashing down. On November 17, 2023, Jadiwi was streaming attempts of Pokemon Sapphire Any% Glitchless, a game he first completed a run in just 4 days previously with a time of 2 hours and 39 seconds. The run he was currently on had an even better pace, and when it finished, he had achieved a second place time that was 5 seconds off the current world record. If we look at Jadiwi's timeline with the game, we see between his first run and second place time, only 4 days had passed, with another runner commenting that a 2-hour time is insane for a first attempt. Jadiwi replied that he had been practicing every split of the game for several days and was close to a 202 in his previous attempts, but that he struggled with the bike sections. Aside from these 2 runs and Discord comments, with only the second place run even having a video, there wasn't any other evidence of Jadiwi's progress with the game. While he did have history with other games in the series, his less than a week grind to second place didn't sit well with one person in particular, the world record holder, Wave Warrior, and he set to work analyzing Jadiwi's run. Since Jadiwi admitted to having problems with the bike, this was one of the first things Wave Warrior checked. In particular, he scrutinized a trick that lets you skip spinner trainers called run-to bikes. When you approach a spinner, they behave differently based on how you're moving. If you're walking or on the bike, they will pick a random direction to look every 32 frames. But if you're running, they will always look in the direction you're traveling when you enter their hearing radius, meaning a spinner will always catch you when running. This mechanic can be exploited to always pass a spinner, provided you can execute the requirements fast enough. When a spinner picks a direction to look, they will remain stationary for 31 frames. On the 32nd, the random direction calculation is run again. This gives you a window of 31 frames to pass a spinner with zero risk of being caught. So players run into the hearing radius to force a certain direction, then get on the bike, which takes 16 frames, start moving, which is 8 frames, with each additional tile of movement being 4 frames. This sequence adds up to 28 frames, giving you a 6-frame window to come to a complete stop after running, as you can't mount the bike while moving. This is a very demanding trick, with top runners being able to pull it off more often than not. But when the 7 run-to bikes in Jadiwi's run were analyzed, it turned out that none of them were safe. He was so late on one of them that the NPC turned before he was safely passed, and on a second, he did the movement wrong and continued traveling in its line of sight, meaning had it turned, he would have been caught. This didn't look like the movement execution of a world record level runner, so Wave Warrior dug deeper into the run, this time analyzing the 3 manipulations that take place, and what he found didn't add up either. While this speedrun was beginning to look questionable, one thing you don't want to question is the factuality of your news. And this video's sponsor Ground News can help in that regard. Ground News is a platform and app I use to stay up to date on events around the world, with it combined manipulation housing, and I'm sure which will change your RNG. And coincidentally, this happens during Wingle Manip, so your step count matters. So what does this have to do with Jadiwi's run? When he's leaving Little Root Town, he walks straight up, which triggers Mom to walk over to you. This not only wastes time compared to talking to Mom yourself, but also alters the step count. This put his step count at -7 compared to the established route, meaning he had to make a correction on the fly to save the manip. Since he's on an odd number, this meant he needed to do one of the correcting steps in the door of the market, as it's the only place where a single step can be adjusted. Jadiwi doesn't do this, however, and takes 2 steps above a ledge instead, resulting in a step count of -5. According to top runners, this spot isn't where you'd make a correction for Wingle Manip, so this was most likely a movement mistake. But a -5 step count still has a 50% chance of success, and the manip works in Jadiwi's run. Later in the run is Kyogre Manip, very similar to Wingull, as you soft reset, then use a timer to aid in catching a Kyogre with a first turn Great Ball, with this being considered the hardest manip in the run. Jadiwi also hit this manip on his first try, and we'll come back to why these two manips are significant, as well as look at the Mudkip manip in a bit, as there are 3 healing decisions he made that also raise red flags. Across the run, there are only 5 potions that you'll have access to, so health management and knowing when to use one are extremely important. But if we analyze Jadiwi's use of potions, we don't see the actions of someone with intimate knowledge of the run. Instead, we see someone that doesn't know what they're doing. In Petalburg Woods after the Wingull manip, there's a Team Aqua member with a Poochyena that runners call the Aqua Pooch. Going into this fight, his Mudkip is at 19 of 25 HP, and he decides to use a potion to top it up. This decision makes no sense, as you're not in danger of dying in this fight unless you're at 13 HP. And any experienced runner knows this, but it's not even the only instance. On his way to the 5th gym, he heals his Marshtomp from 50 out of 81 before fighting the Delcatty. The Delcatty only has Double Slap as a damage move, which deals 6 per hit. And if you're taking enough damage in this fight that you have to heal, you likely lost significant time to its non-damaging moves as well, which is a reset anyway. On top of this, it's more beneficial to heal before the next fight, as a Linoon can raise its attack and do significantly more damage. The most egregious heal, however, is at the end of the game when he tops up his Kyogre from 64. The most damage that Steven's Skarmory can do is 45 with its Aerial Ace, meaning the only thing to worry about is a crit. By healing here, he also changes the decisions that Skarmory's AI can take, which opens him up to a potential turnstall. The crit is only a 3% chance, and what makes this worse is that he decided to heal while on world record pace. No top runner would play around the crit with world record on the line, and this decision puts his ability to be a second place runner in serious doubt, with the theory being that he topped up his HP to make it easier to splice in each instance. While a top runner wouldn't make the movement or healing mistakes that Jadiwi did, these are only circumstantial evidence and don't prove concretely that the run was cheated. But there's one more detail that Wave Warrior focused on, and that's Jadiwi's attempt count. If we look at the splits from his first run on November 13th, we see he has a total of 256 attempts, and when he achieved the second place time on the 17th, his attempt count went up to 1126, with these being the only runs he ever finished. That's 870 attempts over the course of 4 days, and he was called out about this in the Discord, with his response being that he played 14 hours a day. But let's analyze this. With a session time of 14 hours across 4 days, we get a total of 56 hours. Since there aren't any VODs of his attempts, we can't know for sure, but let's take his word and assume this is correct. The earliest reset point in the run is Mudkip manip, as it occurs directly at the beginning. To execute it, you need to perform a soft reset, then use a timer to confirm the Mudkip on a certain frame to obtain the naughty nature with specific stats. You won't know if the manip worked until the battle with the Poochyena. If its gender is male, you were a frame early and have the wrong Mudkip. But if you're a frame late, the genders of both Pokemon and Mudkip's HP will be identical to the correct frame. The frame early reset is about 3 minutes and 20 seconds, with the frame late reset being closer to 5 minutes, as you need to play longer to verify the Mudkip. But let's be generous and assume that Jadiwi reset at the 3-minute 20 mark each time. 870 attempts resetting at the earliest possible Mudkip gives a total minute count of 2,900, or just over 48 hours. This leaves 8 hours of time to perform any run that made it beyond Mudkip manip, which equates to 4 full attempts that didn't die, with one of those resulting in a second place run. You can adjust the calculation in Jadiwi's favor a bit by accounting for attempts that reset before Mudkip manip due to error. Wave Warrior offered 100 such attempts in his original calculation and attributed no reset penalty to them as well. Despite this, the time Jadiwi had for anything but Mudkip manip only goes from just under 8 hours to a little over 13 hours, meaning he spent 43 madness-inducing hours grinding Mudkip manips and only saw beyond the first 3 minutes of the game for a total of 13 hours, or 6.5 full runs of the game at record pace. This is not a lot of time, especially when you consider that the game is full of high-variance fights that can end a run. But Jadiwi is questioned about his attempt count and has this to say: 50% of my attempts did not pass Roxanne, and 45 of the remaining 50% did did not pass Tate and Lisa. Roxanne is the first gym leader, with the fight taking place just over 15 minutes into the run. Given that he has a huge attempt count, this is a clever thing to say, but as we saw with the math, it doesn't make any sense. Sapphire is a hard game to get a run going in, given the various run killers, with top runners spending entire streams not getting anything beyond the mid-game. And given that Jadiwi had a budget of 13 hours, the only conclusion is that at best, his attempt count is fake, and at worst, the entire run is suspect. In a message to another runner, Jadiwi claims that he doesn't save any of his splits, and that he sets the attempt count by hand each time he starts a grind. It is possible he grinded 14 hours a day and put the attempt count in wrong, but there's no way of verifying if this claim is true or false. If we go back to Mudkip Manip, we also see another glaring issue. Given that he would have spent 43 hours on this trick alone, it reveals another fact. Jadiwi is extremely inconsistent at performing manipulations. If Jadiwi is this bad at Mudkip Manip, then it's safe to say he's likely not great with Wingle Manip either. And assuming he talked to Mom and used the -5 step count in every attempt, only 3 of 6 frames on this step count produce a Wingle. This means he would have been failing the Manip 50% of the time, even if he executed it properly. Kyogre Manip is likely harder to perform than the other two as well, especially with the added pressure of being on good pace, with each failed attempt costing 45 seconds. But Jadiwi hits this first try, despite spending over 40 hours resetting on Mudkip Manip. He also played on the DS console, which isn't hardware top runners prefer to play on, as it's slightly slower than the Game Boy player for GameCube, resulting in final times that are about 10 seconds slower due to the frame rate difference. Meaning had he played this on the optimal hardware, it would have been world record by 5 seconds. None of this sat well with Wave Warrior, but since he couldn't find a splice or other definitive method of cheating, he kept this to himself. Fortunately, he only had to wait a month before more people became suspicious, as Jadiwi laid claim to the most prestigious record in all of Pokemon. The current red any % glitchless record was set on January 26th in 2023 and was the result of almost a decade of grinding by Pokeguy. Not only was Pokeguy's time monumental, but it beat the previous record by over a minute and came just 3 seconds away from what many believe to be the game's final minute barrier. His time was so good that a community member offered a $5,000 bounty for anyone that could beat it before February 1st, 2024, with an additional bounty of $1,000 being offered for anyone that set a 143. On Boxing Day 2023, Jadiwi would stream a run of any % glitchless that beat the record by 11 seconds, but instead of being celebrated, it caused a wave of suspicion across the community. And if we look at his history with the category, we can start to see why. Looking at his grind between June 7th and 10th, he improved his PB by a minute each day. This is unusual, as it normally takes runners months to drop their time by a minute this close to the record, with PBs usually resulting in a gain of 10 to 20 seconds. For Jadiwi, the opposite was true. A gain of a few seconds was rare, with leaps of over a minute being a regular occurrence. And looking at his attempt count during June, we see his 147 came on his 119th run. Another anomaly, as most top runners near this time have an attempt count in the thousands. This rapid progression did raise some questions, but nobody suspected that he could be cheating. And when he resumed this category in September, it's worth noting that the only run he provided with video proof was the 147.52. He'd set a 4th place time that came 5 days after a record in blue no save corruption. And if we look at his attempt count, we see that it's now at 1,230, with his last PB having a count of 851, meaning he did 371 attempts in the span of 5 days. This brings us to the record, and as soon as the final split was hit, Wave Warrior proof called Jadiwi in chat by asking him to hard reset the emulator to prove the run was done live and not pre-recorded. But instead, Jadiwi ended stream and went into the Pokemon Discord. He first posted a screenshot of his run with the caption, "Getting lucky is not a crime." Then 10 minutes later, addressed the proof call. "I just saw my chat on the replay. I didn't have it during the run. I just saw the hard reset requests. Now I'm sus." Sus indeed, as setting a record this prestigious after a week-long grind with thousands of dollars of bounties on the line, then dodging the proof call isn't exactly behavior the community expects. And with more than one person now doubting his accomplishments, an investigation was launched by the moderation team. Given that he didn't stream many of his attempts, the mods instead focused on 3 different pieces of evidence: his sum of best segments, his stream layout, and messages he had with the person issuing the bounties. If we look at his sum of best, we see that in his record, it's at 140.54. But in the 10 runs he streamed leading up to this, his sum of best was a 141.24. Between his 10th stream and the one where he got the record, there was a gap of 50 minutes. And top runners are in agreement that setting 30 seconds of gold splits in an offline attempt in this amount of time isn't possible. So what happened? When Jadiwi did stream, it wasn't always on Twitch, and looking at archives of deleted streams he did on YouTube, we see that a few days prior to December 21st, his sum of best steadily improved before arriving at a 140.54, the same number that was seen in his record. When questioned about this, he offered two explanations. Between the 21st and 22nd, he moved locations to his parents' house, and due to using a different computer, his splits file was out of date. The move itself isn't disputed, and on the surface, this appears to be a good explanation as to why his splits file rolled back for his attempts on Christmas and Boxing Day. But why did his sum of best change in the world record run? Jadiwi's answer to this is that in the 50 minutes between his 10th and 11th run, he went back through his VODs and added his correct gold splits so that his sum of bests would be correct. This claim seems dubious at best, since he could have done this before grinding any attempts at his new location, but if we analyze his stream layout, we can cast even more doubt on this claim. This is his stream layout for the 10 streams he did prior to the record, and this is the layout of his world record stream, which looks almost identical, except when you lay it over his previous 10 streams, you see that his live split shifted a couple of pixels. People change their stream layout all the time, but making a minor adjustment like that between attempts is a bit odd. And if you compare the layout from his world record to a layout from his old location, you can see that they're an exact match. The only way this could have happened was if while he was editing his sum of bests between his 10th and 11th runs, he adjusted the live split layout to pixel perfectly match his layout from before the move. Given that he dodged a proof call and the sum of best and layout from his record match a stream before he moved, the mods were of the opinion that he pre-recorded this run and passed it off as real during his Twitch live stream. They didn't have a smoking gun, however, as no splice or use of TAS had been found. But this was just the tip of the iceberg, and they shifted their focus to other records he had set. If we go back to the end of November, we see that Jadiwi was involved in 3 different races for Diamond and Pearl any percent Maniplus, where he set a 105.59 in the first race and a 59.46 in the second. The 105 is a very good time for a race, but the 59.46 is very significant, as not only is it a world record, but it's also the first sub 1 hour time in the category's history. This was one of the first runs the team looked at after the investigation was launched, and there are a number of things wrong with it, so let's begin with an overview. The no manipulation category requires you to complete the first 2 gyms along with 2 Team Galactic encounters before an out of bounds glitch can be used to get you to the Hall of Fame cutscene. The run relies heavily on your starting Pokemon having good stats, with Chimchar being selected, but that's not all it needs. The powerhouse move of the run is Hidden Power, and in Gen 4, its type and power are determined by the user's IVs, which are just the values that determine a Pokemon's stats. Since you can't manipulate, this makes getting a good Chimchar a reset-intensive endeavor, with a few different combinations of stats and hidden powers being viable, but the best type to get by far is Grass. Since you can't check your hidden power to see what stats it has, you need to test it in battle, and in Jadiwi's world record, we see that against the rival Starly, it wasn't very effective, but against the Piplup, it was super effective. This indicates that it's Grass type, and given the high damage output, the base power is also high as well. At this point, he has a lead on the other racers, but even with a Grass-type hidden power, the recommended route is to get some extra experience before taking on the gym. But Jadiwi doesn't do this and heads straight for Roark. Leaving the extra XP on the table is a risk, and doesn't make much sense given that this was a race. But you could always say that Jadiwi stopped caring about the race and wanted to go for record given his great start. So this isn't the most convincing evidence. When he finishes the run, he's beaten the previous world record by over a minute and a half. But given the investigation, it no longer passed the sniff test, so the mods investigated. This time, it would be Minnow that analyzed the run, and not finding anything on its face that was wrong, he broke out some tools that would help him identify the RNG seed of the run itself. Solving for the initial RNG seed of a Diamond or Pearl run isn't very difficult, as the seed is composed of 3 different variables. The first 2 digits are calculated by the calendar date and minute plus second value of the DS clock, with the 3rd and 4th digits being calculated by the hour value. The final 4 are the number of frames since the game booted up, plus the last 2 digits of the year. The seed is generated the frame you clear of a TV cutscene, with the frame since boot being counted from the first white frame after doing a soft reset. But calculating Jadiwi's seed was difficult for 2 reasons. First, Minnow didn't know what year Jadiwi's DS clock was set to, but since it can only be a finite number, this just means that his calculation will involve a range of seeds rather than a single. And second, Jadiwi hid his DS clock from the video, choosing to have the calculator active instead. This is a strange decision, as most runners won't ever change this setting. But fortunately, the clock is the default option when you receive the Pokach, so there was an instance where the DS clock was active on Jadiwi's screen. This let Minnow get a range of seeds that only varied by the year variable, so he put them into a tool called Pokefinder, which lets you enter RNG seeds, and in turn, it spits out the frames that a certain Pokemon will appear on. This was only part of the equation, however, as he also needed the IVs of the Chimchar, which can be calculated by looking at its stat increases at level up. But in this case, Jadiwi was using a tool that displayed the stats on screen, so Minnow plugged them into Pokefinder along with the range of RNG seeds he calculated. And what do you think happened when he hit the find button? The Chimchar that Jadiwi used did not appear in any of the RNG seeds, a clear indicator that the run had been spliced. This wasn't the only RNG analysis that Minnow performed, however, as the trainer ID that appears when you enter the Hall of Fame is also tied to the seed. When he reverse engineered the seed from the trainer ID, the specific ID appeared in a handful of seeds, but only one of these can occur when the DS clock is at hour 1, which we know was Jadiwi's clock time if we look at when he received the Pokach and subtract his run time. This seed has a slightly higher delay than was expected of Jadiwi's run, given that Minnow frame counted what his delay should be. And if we look at the Chimchar that the trainer ID seed can generate, the Hidden Power Grass with a hasty nature isn't one of them. That makes 2 pieces of conclusive evidence that the run was cheated, but Minnow took it a step further and injected the trainer ID seed into a run. The point of this was so he could compare NPC movement between the seed observed at the start and the seed generated from his trainer ID, as NPCs will always move the same on a given RNG seed. In Jadiwi's run, we see that the NPC outside of Mom's house starts facing left, then looks up, but on the trainer ID seed, the NPC starts looking right, then switches to left, then looks up. This proves that his trainer ID doesn't match the seed in the beginning, and that even if this was the correct trainer ID, the Chimchar doesn't exist on this seed or the seed observed at the start. This was the smoking gun the mods were looking for, and before we move on to his other runs, let's look at some of his behavior around this one. On November 30th, after he set the 105, he went into Singe chat and said he should try for a sub-hour time. As we know now, he achieved the feat the very next day with his fake run, so he was foreshadowing his own accomplishment in another runner's chat, then returned to gloat after he successfully passed off the fake run. I spoke to some of the runners involved in the race as part of my own investigation and asked them who organized the 3 races, and in each case, it was Jadiwi who organized them, showing that not only did he fake a run, but he calculated the when and where of how he would show it off. One of them even says that looking back, his tone of voice during the run doesn't sound authentic, which lines up completely given that we know the run was pre-recorded, and to help hide this fact, he made tapping sounds on his DS during the race to make it seem like he wasn't playing a recording. Jadiwi had a previous record in this category as well, and he even points out that the time difference between them was almost identical, but I guess that's not hard to accomplish when you're faking runs and setting up races to pass them off as legit. But this Pearl run was just the beginning. If we look at Jadiwi's timeline since he started speedrunning, we see that he began with Pearl, then moved on to various categories in Gen 1, with his first record coming in Red Any %, a run of pure execution that uses save corruption to credits warp. He had posted some times with video proof prior to this record, so it didn't raise any suspicion. A lot of his runs between August and early October did not have video proof, But that would change after he finished running gold, as he started setting records very quickly. Most of them were in short categories he was considered good at, so they didn't raise many eyebrows. But no save corruption is a different story. At the time when it was performed, it was generally believed to be a legitimate but insanely lucky run. However, once the investigation started, some serious doubt was cast on its legitimacy. The run is a mix of RNG and execution, as you need to play to Viridian Forest before you can activate the credits warp glitch, which requires the rival fight and going through the tall grass on Route 1 3 times. For the rival fight, the fastest thing that can happen is for the Squirtle to use Tackle 5 times to KO your Charmander, with it having about a 50% chance to select Tackle over Tail Whip. This equates to about a 3% chance of getting the optimal RNG, with some edge cases bumping the odds up a bit, but they're still low. When it comes to the tall grass, you need to pass through 41 tiles of it, with each tile having a tile value of 25. To decide if you get an encounter, the game rolls a number between 0 and 255, with an encounter being generated if the number rolled is less than the tile number. This gives odds of about 2% for 0 encounters, with combined odds of about 5% to get that and a good Squirtle fight, and this RNG is required for any potential world records. After that, you need to manipulate a Spearow catch, as it's a better Pokemon than Charmander for clearing the trainers in the forest. Once you have Spearow, you're now ready for the most difficult manipulation in all of Pokemon speedrunning. It involves manipulating 0 encounters in the forest so you can trigger a Pikachu fight as you enter a trainer's line of sight. This gets the game in a state where your actions now edit the code itself, which is known as arbitrary code execution, or ACE. The manipulation doesn't end at the Pikachu, however. A runner named Grogear developed it so that you carry it through 2 more bug catcher fights, with the requirements being frame-perfect inputs and short windows to clear text boxes, which leaves a lot of spots for mistakes across the 2-minute manipulation. In Jadiwi's run, not only did he get a 5-turn death with the rival, but he also had 0 encounters before the Spearow manip. And when it came time to execute Grogear's new manip, not only did he perform it, but he also got 2 unmanipulated crits on the final 2 bug catcher fights. When Grogear first developed the extended manipulation, it took him weeks to get a below average consistency with it. But if we look at Jadiwi's proficiency with a comparable manip, we don't see much reason to be confident in his abilities. The triple extended manip in Red Glitchless requires you to manipulate a Nidoran encounter and catch, continue it into a Pidgey encounter and catch, then extend it into a 0 encounter forest until you fight the bug catcher, where you force one final event by having its Weedle use String Shot. It's agreed by top runners that while this manip is hard, Grogear's in the no save corruption category is harder. And when it came to Jadiwi's execution at the triple extended, we see that he often dropped it at the Pidgey catch, as happened in his 143. This doesn't mean he can't execute the harder manip, but it does cast doubt on his ability to be able to hit it while under the pressure of finally getting the 5-turn death and 0 encounter start. A further problem is that by Jadiwi's own admission, he only had 5 or 6 runs that were 5-turn 0 encounters, but that he failed the extended manip in all of them, meaning the only run he had beyond the manip was this one. After the manip, there are still some actions you need to take, and Jadiwi proceeded to get the best RNG possible with 2 unmanipulated crits, the faster of 2 possible fights, a fast bug catcher dialogue, and a non-crash ace warp, with the combined odds of these events being 1 in 800. You may have noticed a pattern developing where Jadiwi always finishes a run if he gets a good start, with there only being a handful of examples where he posted screenshots of dead runs. And this wasn't lost on the mods as they carried out the investigation. While they couldn't find a splice, they did acknowledge that despite every world record in Pokemon requiring exceptional luck, Jadiwi rarely spent more than a week grinding any category before achieving a record. And in this run, the single attempt he managed to get through the manipulation received the best luck possible, with their verdict being that it was likely achieved through illegitimate means. There's also the Red Glitchless Classic record he set on November 21st, just 4 days after his second place time in Sapphire. When he last ran the category, his attempt count was 164, and the earliest he could have started this grind was midday on the 17th. When he got the record, his attempt count was 622, meaning across 3.5 days, he did 458 attempts. If we run a calculation and assume he played 14 hours a day as he claimed in Sapphire, we see that he was averaging 7 minutes per attempt, which doesn't make a lot of sense, as most runs in this category are getting to Brock. which is at the 11-minute mark. This run also didn't have any identifiable splices in it, but given all the other evidence, this run's legitimacy was also doubted by the mods. And not wanting to alarm Jadiwi in case he tried to hide evidence, they didn't inform him of this investigation when it started. Along with analyzing his runs, they also gathered statements he made in Discord and various Twitch chats, and one that consistently appeared was Jadiwi claiming he didn't lose runs in the late game because he was better at execution and handling pressure. He says that if you gave his RNG to other runners, they wouldn't be able to execute, then complains about people calling him lucky when he sets a record, but congratulate others when they do. But getting called lucky shouldn't have surprised him, given that he finished his best pace ever every single time he got it. After his 145 in Glitchless, he acknowledges that other players who have spent more time grinding than him and have worse times are better runners than he is. It's almost as if he's telling on himself, and then goes on to say that if he wins the $1,000 bounty, he would give half to 2 different runners. He's asked at one point why he doesn't upload any of his runs to the leaderboard, with Jadiwi replying that he doesn't have a Game Boy player and can't run on emulator because his computer sucks. Which brings up another point. When Jadiwi wasn't streaming attempts, he never locally recorded any of his runs. Pokemon Red is not a CPU-intensive game to stream, let alone record. In fact, it can be ran on a TI-84 calculator that uses a processor from 1974, and one member of the community even plays and records attempts on a Lenovo T420, a PC pad that's 13 years old. The first Game Boy emulator released in '96, and one of the first screen recording softwares, Fraps, released in '99. Fraps doesn't require much processing power by today's standards, and its 3.0 version has min specs of a Pentium 4 processor, which is hardware available in the year 2000. Given this, the fact that he didn't record runs and made excuses for why he couldn't makes zero sense, as a PC that's older than he is can perform the required operations without overheating or maxing out on memory. Given the hard evidence in Pearl, the mountain of evidence from Sapphire and other games, and all of these statements, the mods were confident in their investigation and were ready to move forward with their decision. But before they could, Jadiwi posted that he was retiring from speedrunning. He cites an increasing school schedule as the main reason, as he won't have time to do 14-hour-a-day grinds anymore, and says that with the free time he does have, he will be focusing on speed cubing, which is solving Rubik's Cubes incredibly fast. On top of this, he's out of shorter categories to run, as he doesn't have the mental strength to do longer runs and needs breaks every 2 hours, which seems odd given that he would spend 14 hours a day grinding according to his own statements. He then goes into a story about how he was bullied as a child due to a medical condition. I'm not going to dispute this or go into it beyond highlighting that he cites these experiences as to why he didn't stream much during his grinds. He ends with a final shot at another runner, then rides off into the sunset. Or so everyone thought, because the next day, the mods informed him that as a result of their investigation, he had been banned from the Discord and leaderboards. Not informing him about the investigation was a smart move, because immediately after this, he began deleting Discord messages and videos. But luckily, the mods had already backed up everything. He replies to this message the next morning, stating he would wait for the report to be released before commenting. But just 2 hours later, he released another paste bin. It opens with, "GG, quite impressed with the effort to find out how I cheated," and goes into why he cheated his first run, which was the blue no save corruption, claiming he did perform 3,000 attempts, but became frustrated he couldn't get the record. He admits to using save states to splice the run together, then says that he didn't cheat for bounties and that he felt terrible about cheating and didn't like lying to people. But when he saw the run wasn't scrutinized, he decided to cheat more as he wanted to make the most of his remaining time speedrunning. He admits to Sapphire, Red Classic, and Red Glitchless being cheated, and even claims to have had a save state ready in case he was proof called for the 143, then offers a single apology and claims again that he didn't care about the bounties, and had he received them, he would have given half to the runners he promised to distribute the $1,000 bounty to, and that the other $7,500 would have been given to his parents. This statement is absolutely ludicrous and should be reason enough to doubt anything he said, as it's contradicted in the very paste bin itself. If he didn't cheat for the bounties, then why cheat the runs that award you the bounties in the first place? And more importantly, he didn't say that he would have refused the money, but instead claims he would have taken it and given it to other runners and his parents. If he didn't care about the bounties, then why message one of the bounty posters asking if you can stream the runs on Discord instead of on Twitch? This is in direct conflict with his paste bin, since why would you ask if you can claim a bounty if you didn't care about them? Never mind asking to stream your runs in a less public method. Interestingly enough, he never admitted to cheating the Pearl run, despite that one having direct hard evidence, nor did he admit to the red or yellow any percent runs being cheated, likely because at the time of the mods informing him of the ban, they hadn't released the report, so Jadiwi didn't actually know what they had caught and what they hadn't. After his paste bin, he did admit to using save states to splice the Pearl run together, and you might be wondering how no splices were able to be detected, and the answer is that Jadiwi is very familiar with video editing software. He had other YouTube channels where he created music, Photoshop tutorials, and edited challenge videos around Pokemon. The challenge video channel has since been scrubbed, but using the Wayback Machine, you can see that it did have content at one point. So the answer to how he was able to splice undetected is that he was very skilled at using equipment that can create spliced runs. And with the Pearl run in particular, he claims he did it on a flash cart, which has faster load times than the DS. If you look at the loads in the video, however, they are about the same as you'd expect on a DS, meaning he accounted for this discrepancy when splicing the run. This also defeats his earlier claim of not being able to locally record because of his PC being potato quality, as any computer that can run editing software certainly has the capacity to run an emulator with recording software. All of this goes to show the lengths he went through not to get caught, so the mods deserve congratulations in catching this before he was able to claim bounties, as while getting lucky may not be a crime, succeeding in stealing almost $10,000 with fake videos almost certainly is. And who knows, maybe I'll be making a video on a speed tubing cheater later this year. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to support me on Patreon or become a member here on YouTube.
In 2004, the British Federation Against Copyright Theft teamed up with the Motion Picture Association of America to create this public service announcement that, depending on your age, you for sure remember seeing on most commercial DVDs. Its attempts to deter the act of illegally downloading copyrighted material, what we of course call piracy, backfired to say the least. With its overdramatic editing, the ridiculous comparisons to much more serious crimes, and just how in-your-face it was on a marketing scale, the commercial just became a laughingstock. It inspired tons of memes, parodies, and even an urban legend that the music in the ad itself was stolen. Additionally, piracy rates actually went up throughout the 2000s, and according to research published by the Information Society, it is believed that this PSA may have even been responsible for that, creating a sort of Streisand effect. As it turns out, in the world's greatest plot twist, people don't like being told what to do, especially when it's this obnoxious. I mean, come on, comparing downloading a movie to stealing someone's TV, it's obviously not the same thing, right? Well, many sectors of the government all around the world do seem to think they are quite comparable. The war on piracy has been a contentious conflict since, well, the beginning of time. It predates the internet. It's just that the internet changed the game completely. A skill once reserved only for the elites with years of experience and craftsmanship could now be learned and practiced in just a couple of minutes with just a click of a button. It was made clear that even in these modern times, piracy was not only here to stay, but it was only going to get stronger. Much, much stronger. And lots of people weren't happy about that. But regardless of where you stand on the subject, it is clear that the growing prevalence of piracy is part of a deeply rooted issue. It's not something purely motivated out of insubordination, but instead the result of a widespread systemic problem, with many feeling that the burden and costs of legally obtaining a product don't always outweigh the calculated risk of just stealing it. Perhaps it's the companies who are the problem, not the pirates. And I think even on some abstract level, the act of copying these materials, in a weird way, connects us more to them, because it often gives us that chance to observe all the moving parts that go into creating a great work of art, allowing us to see just how human it really is. Ugh, there's just too many ads online. Thank God there's never any ads on my videos. And that's because I use Opera. Opera is a web browser designed to make the online experience tailored to you. Especially with so much of our internet presence today being tracked and bombarded with ads, Opera does away with all of that. Just one click and you can block ads completely. It's all built in, so there's no extensions needed. What I really love is that Opera has a VPN that is built in and completely free of charge and unlimited to use. The other day, I was actually at a coffee shop outside of the country, and the Wi-Fi that I connected to was not allowing me to see YouTube comments. The network had some kind of security feature called restricted mode that was turned on. But all I had to do was turn on the VPN and boom, my comments were back as before. But it also has so much more. It also comes with Aria, the browser's own virtual assistant. You can ask it any questions, provide any prompts, and Aria uses real-time information from the web to provide a clear solution. You can also organize everything through tab islands, which enable you to both save screen space and simplify switching back and forth between pages. It also includes a music player as well as an integrated messenger tool attached to the sidebar with a variety of different music and messaging services to choose from. Opera has made browsing the internet so much easier for me, and now it is my main browser that I use. And if you use the link in the description, you can download Opera completely free and get started using it right away. A special thanks to Opera for providing a fast yet secure and distraction-free online experience. There really isn't a definitive answer to when exactly pirating started, other than the fact that, for as long as humans have been capable of creating and selling things, there have always been people finding ways to obtain them through cutting corners, someone we call a pirate. Like the many grave robbers of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt, or those who robbed Roman ships of their cargo of grains and olive oil. But how do we know the difference between a pirate or just a thief? Is there really a difference at all? This is quite a controversial question for a lot of people, and you will get many different answers. A huge portion of them will say, no, there is no difference. Theft is theft. But others will argue that for it to be considered piracy, it largely depends on the reason behind the theft that's taking place. Historically speaking, piracy has always been founded on some kind of social or economic inequality. And this couldn't be more true than during the golden age of piracy, around the 17th century. This was a time where English farmers were having their land taken away by the rich, leaving them no other choice but to find work in the city. This, of course, led to overpopulation in these areas and therefore created much worse living conditions. The rich were getting richer, and the poor were getting poorer. The only recourse left was to do something about it. It was clear at this time that working for the system was a losing battle, and the only way to make up for what they lost was to get it all back. And so they pillaged and plundered all the booty they could find and didn't give a hoot. Drink up me hearties, yo-ho. But as governmental policy changed and living conditions for the less fortunate improved, the need for this kind of piracy eventually died out. And as technology got better and society became more civilized, the philosophies and customs of what constituted piracy needed to change and reflect that as well. The modern take on piracy was no different from the antiquated sea ventures of the past. What if there was a way you could steal without stealing? That was the main concept that made the practice stand out. With piracy, instead of stealing what somebody already had, you just make a copy of it either for yourself or to be distributed. Everyone wins. It is a victimless crime. This was actually quite common with how music was pirated back in the 1950s. Theoretically, you could make a negative molding of a vinyl record, pour hot wax into this mold where it would assume the shape of these grooves, and once the wax dried up, you had a new record that you could play back on a turntable. Although a common misconception and technically possible, this method was pretty much never used. Because these copies were never identical, the playback sounded terrible, and the materials required often costed more than the records themselves. It was just not commercially viable. Instead, music was pirated through a much cheaper, much more interesting way. If we learned one thing from Edison's phonographs from the 19th century, wax is not a very good medium for storing music. But you know what strangely is? X-ray film. And you didn't even have to pay for it. Just go to any hospital and start digging through the trash. Music pirates cut this material into a circle, burn a hole in the middle of it with a cigarette, and then use one of those old-school phonograph recorders that would carve into the disc the music that was being played nearby. These became known as ribs, or bone music, as you could visibly see the x-rays on them. Some of these look incredibly painful. Bone music became very popular in the Soviet Union, and while the sound quality of the end result wasn't great, it costed next to nothing to produce, so it really didn't matter. And throughout the 60s and 70s, when 8-track tape recorders, VHS, and Betamax were becoming popular, this only got easier. Like a song you're listening to on the radio? Tape it. Don't want to miss the next Doctor Who episode? Just tape it. But make sure no one hijacks the broadcast in the process. And this required much less skill and provided more mediums of entertainment than something like a rib disc. And naturally, the popularity of tapes blew up. Everyone started using them. Technically, the majority of people were now pirating. And because the convenience of taping was so great, there was a growing concern among companies that people would stop buying music or whatever, because they could always just tape it. It was going to hurt the industry. This even led to a Supreme Court case, Sony versus Universal, specifically regarding the taping of television broadcasts, where it was decided that taping was fine as long as it was for personal use and these copies weren't sold for profit. In fact, most networks didn't even care that their programs were being taped, including Mr. Rogers, who even testified about it. And so, this ruling essentially became the legal precedent for how copyright material would be handled. Until something called the computer showed up. Ever heard of it? And during its fledgling phases, the tech community quickly established an attitude and culture for how personal computers should be used, specifically subscribing to the idea that computer information should be shared and openly accessed. Many people understood the true power such a machine had and felt there really shouldn't be any barrier to entry for it. And perhaps that should apply to copyrighted content? This idea, compounding with the fact that computers were just so new that people didn't really understand them, there was essentially no laws regarding computer piracy at all, making it a digital Wild West. But this would change with the Computer Software Copyright Act of 1980. Putting computer programs under the same legal protections as literary works. You are free to access these programs at any local libraries that supply computers. You could even make your own copies of these programs at home for personal use, much like with tapes, just as long as you did not sell them or distribute them on a large scale. Heck, the law didn't even care if you gave a copy to a friend, thanks to the Audio Home Recording Act of 1992. It's just not worth wasting time or resources on something so small. But then along came the internet. As you know, with the internet, computer capabilities grew exponentially. And online, anybody can be your friend. Rather than going to a friend's house to get a copy of that album you really like, now you have 10,000 friends who could give you a copy. And you don't even have to leave the room. The options for obtaining music grew with computers as well. If you wanted to tape a song, you typically had to wait for it to show up on the radio. And even if you did rip it directly from the album or single, the quality often just wasn't as good as we demonstrated. Not only did digital ripping keep sound quality virtually identical, it was much faster, hundreds of copies could be made in seconds, and you could send one copy to multiple people. The only thing left was to actually make it easy to access these songs, so that even people with no knowledge of computers could do it. And so in the 1990s, you have a little program called Napster. Napster helped popularize something called the P2P protocol, short for peer-to-peer. This was particularly clever from both an economic and legal standpoint. Rather than hosting the music themselves like traditional websites do, Napster would simply refer to another Napster user that did in fact have the music file, and you would then download it directly from their computer. Not only was it cheap since Napster didn't need all this bandwidth to host all these files, but they were technically off the hook. Because they weren't the ones hosting the files, they simply knew a guy who knew a guy. The popularity of Napster skyrocketed. It was insane. So many people were using it. Being one of the first P2P programs to become mainstream, it taught more uninformed people about how the internet was being used, and even significantly contributed to online culture, much like how YouTube does today. If you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, you probably remember a lot of people, maybe including yourself, mistaking the songs Sex and Candy as being made by Nirvana, not the one-hit wonder post-grunge band Marcy Playground. You can thank Napster for that. In addition to the lead singer's vocals being similar to Cobain's, someone uploaded the song to Napster's index and made a typo, and the misconception has existed ever since. Now, the entire story of Napster deserves to be its own separate video, so I'll just give you the gist of everything that unfolded after its start. Naturally, the recording labels felt that this system really just wasn't fair. I mean, they weren't getting paid for this sharing of the music. Like, at all. And so, Metallica, Dr. Dre, and other renowned recording artists sued Napster for copyright infringement. This was a very controversial story at the time, and even other successful recording artists thought the whole thing was ridiculous.
Kids want to listen to music, you know? I don't think bands should be so concerned with making every penny that should be squeezed out of everything.
And by the early 2000s, the United States government ordered an injunction to terminate Napster's indexing server, which effectively shut the service down. Although Napster's file sharing activities were now history, the program set an example for how file sharing was going to exist online moving forward. Soon, other programs would start popping up, such as Gnutella, LimeWire, and even an entirely new protocol, BitTorrent, would show up in 2001. I've made an entire video on how torrenting works, so you can check that out if you want to learn more about it. Now, what made these programs different from Napster? How were they immune to the copyright police? Well, overall, these programs didn't provide any database of copyrighted content. Instead, they simply provided the tools needed for P2P file sharing, which could also be used for a million other things that are completely legal to download, like programs, public domain music, etc. It was now the responsibility of the user to find these databases. That's what places like Demonoid or Pirate Bay were for. In fact, these programs generally condemned the pirating of content on their disclaimers. Napster was basically like if you had a program like uTorrent that had the Pirate Bay built into it. Obviously, you can't do that. It's endorsing an illegal company. These companies didn't do that, so there's a lot more plausible deniability. Additionally, because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, safe harbor laws made the uploaders responsible for copyright infringement, not the company, just as long as they were reasonably putting effort into fighting piracy. But even if these companies were to be pursued by governments, they were designed to be decentralized, meaning they used thousands and thousands of different P2P servers, unlike Napster, which only used one. So if one of these servers legally were shut down, another could just pop right back up, effectively becoming a game of cat and mouse. And as online technology got better, internet speeds and bandwidth increased, which meant people could now pirate much more sophisticated things, not just music. This included movies, video games, computer programs, just about everything under the sun. And because all these companies were coming up with ingenious loopholes around these new laws, leaving the government pretty much out of options, they essentially resorted to scare tactics that made piracy look unappealing, which is why you had ads like this showing up. Then they started taking other interesting routes in fighting it, through something called illegal numbers. Yes, you heard that right. There are certain numbers that you are not allowed to say, write down, or even own, because these numbers are used as encryption keys for accessing copyrighted work. As we've discussed many times on this channel before, in order for files to be sent online, they have to be demodulated into something tangible, like a string of numbers or code, in order for it to be reassembled on the other side. And certain numbers represent certain copyrighted works. I'm going to use a very simple example of this. Let's say that I want to copyright this image of myself. It is not available on the internet, and the only way you can access it is by paying me. Well, if someone were to buy this image from me, upload it to the canvas of Babel, they could get this really long string of numbers that represents this image. So if they copy and paste this number and send it to somebody, that other person could now go on the Canvas of Babel website, paste in that number, and access my image without even paying for it. And if someone's online activity isn't encrypted and I can somehow see them distributing this number online, I could sue them for damages, thanks to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But this just makes things so complicated and muddy. People don't respond to blonde authority and bossiness. They respond to positive reinforcement. You know what truly helps in fighting piracy? Compromise. During the height of Napster, Apple decided to take this newfound easy way of accessing music and capitalize off of it with its Rip, Mix, Burn campaign. Basically, they worked with the record labels to find a legal way to provide users the convenience Napster had. Albums at the record store were often $15, $20. What if the album sucked? Now you can't get your money back. Well, with Apple's new program, iTunes, you could buy individual songs for just 99 cents. Then you could take all these songs you just bought, rip any songs off of CDs you already own, create any arrangement you want of these songs, and then burn them onto a new CD. And you could do this as many times as you liked, because you already bought the songs, you don't need to buy them again. iTunes would then explode with the release of the iPod. You no longer even needed CDs. You could put thousands of songs in your pocket. The convenience was so great and the cost so cheap, over the course of time, the general public didn't really see a ton of reason for pirating music anymore. And then, of course, websites like YouTube started popping up. Although DMCA had already been in place for some time, there still wasn't a whole lot of legal precedent backing it up. So naturally, the early days of YouTube are just filled with pirated movies, TV shows, songs, everything. But even as YouTube started cracking down on these copyright issues, it provided tons of original content, and as streaming offered a super reasonably priced alternative to cable, it was actually quite enticing for a lot of people to just give up piracy. They were willing to pay just a little bit to have all their entertainment in the palm of their hand. There was a compromise, just like with the iPod. It's about seeing your audience and finding a solution to their problem, rather than just telling them what to do. The government didn't understand this, and as a result, proposed one of the most controversial bills in online history.
There we go. Cheated the system. Come on, dude, it doesn't work. Not launching. Come on.